OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
7:30 on this Tuesday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And it is one of those weeks where being a fan of Irish sports will either make your week or it will absolutely crush you and destroy your week. We've got plenty of build up to Portugal and to New Zealand this morning. Shane Keegan and Ronan O'Gara amongst the guests. And if you've got any questions for the lads, you can tweet us at Off The Ball or leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Gilroy, how are you getting on?
Yeah, welcome back on. How are you?
Thanks a million. I'm extremely jet lagged. A couple of hours of sleep last night, so when I just am frozen staring into the camera a little bit later on and there was just dead silence, please fill the silence and maybe get someone to give me a quick nudge.
You can pretend that it's just your dodgy internet connection or that it's actually on the end of the watcher's dodgy internet connection, and that's the issue. Where were you, and tell us what you were doing?
We will be getting into this a little bit later on. So I was in Chicago for Northwestern University against University of Iowa. This was a Saturday night game, obviously, as all college football is, because Northwestern coming to Dublin next year to play Nebraska. Slight underdogs, slightly smaller program than Nebraska, obviously, next year. So it was intriguing to get out there and see how they operate. So part of it was seeing the game on Saturday, but part of it was also getting toured around this university. And you probably noticed, sure, you probably know over to colleges there before, but Jesus, they do things on an absolutely ridiculous scale. It is bonkers. If the Irish rugby team rocked up to Northwestern University's sports facility, they would probably say it was the best training facility they've ever seen in their life. They basically just opened up this new $250 million facility in 2018, which is right on the shore of Lake Michigan, where you can turn around from the beach and boom, you've got a massive soccer, biggest gym you've ever seen in your life. You've got dozens of multi-purpose sports facilities. You've got virtual reality rooms for your quarterbacks in here. It is absolutely crazy. I'm sure that anybody who's been over to one of these games before knows that the Saturday night lights and all that are such a big deal, but the inner workings of these sports programs are just bonkers, quite frankly.
How close to Chicago is it? Is it like in the city?
Oh, well, it's 10 miles north, so it's in Evanston, Illinois. And when you're on the balcony outside this massive sports centre, you've just got a beautiful view in the background of Chicago skyline. So not a bad old place to be set up if you're a student going there. We also got a trip down to South Bend because there was the announcement for the 2023 game in Ireland as well, with Notre Dame playing in 2023. So we got two campuses out of our one trip. Went over the time zone into Indiana to check out Notre Dame. They brought us onto the pitch. All the ushers welcomed us into their arms, basically. They were that friendly and showed us around their sports facilities there as well. What happened? Yeah. Well, basically, when you get in there, there's basically,
good night, Eoin.
There are these, there's about half a dozen to a dozen middle-aged men who are volunteers as ushers, and they just stand at the gates of the university and they say, "Welcome to Notre Dame." And every single person says that when you go in, and I'm like, I feel really important right now. I feel extremely special because these 8 people have all said "Welcome to Notre Dame" in a very friendly manner. It's the small things that get me, Ger. I'm sure you can appreciate. But that was how the last couple of days have been spent. We did get time in the tailgate, most importantly, before the game on Saturday night. We'll be bringing that to you a little bit later on. The first time getting to spend some time with fans who've been, enjoying the day since the pandemic, really. So this is the first time to bring this to the people this morning.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. You've done Japan, time for you to do the United States of America. And did you get a night out in Chicago? Did you get to have a steak in Chicago?
Yes, we did. And again, this is something that I feel really, really proud of. So, we got out on Friday night, a few of us, mostly journalists, really. I'm not sure why that was the case. I think you would probably swear that maybe journalists have more of a tendency to stay out late or something. And I'm not an expert in the city before. I've been once before. I loved it. I don't really have any names at the top of my tongue for places to go. So I went on to Google. It was like, good late bars in Chicago. We went there, we showed up, and it turned out it was a bar that Anthony Bourdain had selected when he visited Chicago. His portrait was up on the wall. So basically, my taste is exactly the same as Anthony Bourdain's when it comes to picking a pub in Chicago. Don't mean to brag, but I've never felt as proud as I did in that very moment.
Okay, very good, very good. I realised that he's your little Pinterest board, so that's good.
He really is. So we'll have more on that a little bit later on. The big thing this morning, Ger, and I mean, you say it's, or I say it's a big week of sport. All Blacks, Portugal. You say forget all that. It's all about the managerial merry-go-round. And it's all about Stevie G to Birmingham, get him into Aston Villa, get him into the hot seat. How do you feel about all of this?
I would prefer not Stevie G. I don't really want to be the experimental phase of Steven Gerrard's managerial career. I feel the same about Steven Gerrard and his experience at Rangers as you would feel about any of those young managers who are just cutting their teeth. It's like he got Rangers at a very good time, and I would like somebody who has cut their teeth in one of the European leagues. I'm sure the Villa job is quite interesting if you're a rising young manager in Holland or France or perhaps even Germany, because it seems like a lot of good young German managers in recent seasons have had success coming to the Premier League. Maybe that's where Villa should be looking, as opposed to, that guy used to come and dominate every game he played out of Villa Park, and what a great player he was, and look at his furrowed brow. That's very impressive, and all the players will really want to play for him. I don't know who it was yesterday on the show. We were talking about, you never really got the impression that it might have been Daniel Harris, who was like, you never really got the impression that Steven Gerrard was running the game with his brain. He was running it through his heart. And it feels that that's a very accurate description, and why that might not necessarily translate to being a brilliant manager. Like when you watch Gerrard play, and I actually was at a game at Villa Park where Liverpool and Villa drew 1-1, and Steven Gerrard was unbelievable in that game. But Rafa Benitez hoiked him off after 65 minutes, and the first question Benitez got asked afterwards in the press conference was, Steven Gerrard must be injured, eh? It's Brian Glanville. I don't know if you know Brian Glanville, the really old, venerable, the guy's kind of essentially, I think he might have covered the first World Cup. And he was absolutely astonished to find out that Benitez had hoiked him off because he wasn't doing what he was asked to do. Instead, he was doing everything. He was playing right back. He was playing left wing. He was trying to score. I think he did score. And no, he was supposed to be a central midfielder. He was supposed to be trying to run the game. And to be honest, maybe Steven Gerrard has learned from that. And maybe Gerrard has become a brilliant communicator in the dressing room, but I just haven't seen enough. Like, I don't think he's the right person for this relegation battle at the moment, which is what it's going to become. And it's interesting to me that Dean Smith is being linked with the Norwich job. Like, I don't know, Paul McGrath yesterday was on Instagram saying that he thinks that the Villa board pulled the plug too soon. And to be honest, I kind of agree.
Yeah, like it was the first sign almost of a little bit of a weakness in Dean Smith's tenure, and they've pulled the trigger. We've also got a swathe of Villa players coming out here and saying thank you for the memories, basically, Dean Smith. I'm not sure how you feel about all this. Emi Buendia, one of the latest to come out and say thank you for giving me the opportunity to play for this club. It was a short period working together, but I know you were a great manager and a really good person. I want to wish you all the best in the future, Purple Heart.
Well, Emmy, maybe you could have, played a little bit better and rewarded some of that faith that they showed in you, because you have been a bust so far, buddy. You have been a bust. So many of the players that they've signed, I think Dean Smith maybe the Athletic made a point that he was making the point, or maybe he took it from the Athletic, but there was definitely he's had his 3 summer signings on the field for 28 minutes, at the same time for 28 minutes so far all season, Ings and Bailey and Buendia together, and finally they're all getting fit around the same time, and the expectation was that after the international break they'd all be available to him, and he was like, look, that's when he was being fired he was like, I've only had these guys, and that certainly leaked out. But Buendia has been a big disappointment so far. He was supposed to be a player who's going to immediately step up into the Premier League and fill some of the role that Grealish fulfilled, while there was more defensive solidity. And I don't know. Look, in fairness, I do think Dean Smith was in a bit of a funk, and a little bit like what's going on with Solskjaer. There was 3 at the back 4. What am I doing week in, week out? This works one week, it doesn't work the next week. What's our identity? And actually, generally, that's I would say, particularly in a team like Villa, you should be able to be flexible between game plans depending on who you're playing against. But there was no sense that he'd found a way to work Buendia into the team. And frequently in the big games, Buendia was starting on the bench, and he's your 30 million. He's the guy you've kind of hitched your wagon to. And Danny Ings started the season really well, but then the goals started to tail off, and Ings and Watkins weren't playing well as a duo. So last season's brightest spark, and obviously not Grealish, but last season's brightest spark, and your new striker, is he actually replacing him? How's that working? What's going on here? So there was just a bit of confusion, and I don't know if Steven Gerrard's going to be able to walk in and go, right, this is how we're going to play football. I mean, look, maybe Steven Gerrard wants to be the new Jurgen Klopp and he just copies Klopp and he gets somebody in his backroom team who's able to do exactly what Klopp does, and he's just the front and the brains of somebody else. But that's what I would like.
Just one other thing then on this. So Aston Villa on 10 points, 2 points above the relegation zone. Norwich obviously on 5 points at the bottom. We kind of have Norwich written off, but they're only 5 points behind Aston Villa. So as an Aston Villa fan, would you rather see Dean Smith go there, or are you just hoping and praying that Frank Lampard and the links with Norwich City actually come to fruition so you can write them off? Yeah,
I mean, well, it depends, right? As a Villa fan, I'm actually more of an Ireland Andrew Omobamidele fan. I want whatever manager comes in and says, you're my number one guy, that's who I want to get the job, irrespective of what it means for Villa in the long run. Because I was making this point to Johnny Ward yesterday, I could see Andrew Omobamidele being captain of a top 4 team at some point in 4 or 5 years' time with 80 internationals under his belt. Like, that's the level of footballer that I think we're dealing with there. I hope that we're dealing with there. And which would Dean Smith reward him? I mean, Dean Smith likes his burly, experienced centre backs. Although, I mean, in fairness, he gave Tuanzebe a good run out in the Championship when he was a kid on loan from Man United. So, I mean, look, if Frank Lampard gets the job, that's like Frank Lampard being appointed to bring them back up. But I think there's a bit of that off Dean Smith as well. Like, he's a very good Championship manager, excellent Championship manager. So maybe the board are deciding that actually they're gone.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a manager to keep you up, you're picking Smith over Lampard. If you're looking for a manager to get you up next season, you're picking Smith over Lampard. I think if Dean Smith is available in this situation for Norwich City, you're picking Dean Smith, all things considered. Right, it is 7:42 on this Tuesday morning. OTB AM is live with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning. So Shane Keegan will be with us shortly after 8 o'clock to look ahead to the Portugal game and a couple of other talking points there as well. The sports page is coming your way at 8:20, and then Ronan O'Gara will join us at 8:25 this morning to look ahead to the All Blacks and a bit of Japan reaction there as well. Orla Foley will be with us at 9:05, sister of Anthony Foley, to talk about a new song written and recorded by Barry Murphy, which is going to be released this weekend. Phil Egan talking football as well at 9:15. And then Pat Nevin on Monday Night Football with Joe coming your way at 9:30. Now, The Snap is our weekly American football show, and it's brought to you in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Northwestern versus Nebraska is at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, August 27th next year. You can check out their website, collegefootballireland.com, for full details. As we mentioned, I travelled to Chicago, to Illinois, to watch Northwestern University take on Iowa at the weekend and get a first-hand taste of college football, but most importantly, get a first-hand taste of the tailgate beforehand. We are here outside Ryan Field, where Northwestern have been beaten by University of Iowa. Let's have a look at what the car park was like before the game.
Traditions on game day are we come here. I had a friend, Roger. We used to have an ambulance that would come. We've got about 6 spots, usually about 40, 50 people. We tend to go into the game at start time. We don't always do it. We've got a bunch of people who have TVs in the back of their cars. And we like to imbibe a little bit. I got a new streaming thing with my phone so we can stream all the channels we need, watch the games, go into the game. You know, have a cigar, but don't tell my wife.
Hey, win or lose, it's still booze.
I mean, tailgates are always great here. You get in the parking lot, you take down some beers, and you say, go Cats. It's basically all you do.
Pat Fitzgerald is a gift from God to Evanston, to the United States, and soon to Ireland. We love Fitz. Hashtag Go Cats!
Well, when you host a tailgate, first of all, your food's got to be excellent. Your beers have got to be excellent. You got to have Jamesons, which I forgot to pick up myself.
If you're day drinking, you can't drink all day unless you start in the morning.
Big fan of Ireland. And anyway, so we have a magic trick here. So what we have is standard blue thing here, please. So what we're going to do is we're going to shove this into the hand. Like so.
Hashtag Go Cats.
Got to shove it in there with the arm.
Where'd it go? Magic Mark, where'd it go? Oh my God! Oh my God! Hashtag Go Cats.
People come from hundreds of miles around to gather this. We're baking a chocolate cake. Over here. We got it in the Dutch oven. We're cooking a chocolate cake for everyone. It's actually a chocolate brandy cherry tort.
Can we see?
Yeah.
So that's a chocolate cake.
Yes.
My message to Irish people, be ready. There's no greater, no more powerful team in the Big Ten than the Purple. No greater force in the Big Ten than the Northwestern Wildcats. We're going to play Nebraska? Nebraska sucks, and the Cats are great. No. We're talking about hashtag Go Cats against Nebraska and Ireland.
Nebraska. And that's something we can get behind because their corn is just a lot worse than ours, and it's kind of embarrassing at that point.
We've probably been to Kerry 3 or 4 times, loved it. We watch them play Irish. What sport do they play? Like when they're hitting with? Loved it. Loved it. Couldn't do it, but I loved it.
I mean, we're going to win by 30. If we score 30, we probably won't. But at the end of the day, go Hawks, and I want you guys to take care.
Don't act stupid. Well, what I really want to say is, we've had a couple rough 2 weeks. But, we're Midwest, and we ball, and hey, I'm from Chicago. Don't get me wrong. I love Chi-Town. But you know what it is? At the end of the day, Northwestern can off. We are home city, baby. Let's run. Come on now. Dollar Yanks. Dollar Drinks at Summit. Come ride. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love Dublin. I'll bring Guinness. We actually are going to Ireland. Guinness. I heard it's way better there than here. Guinness. I'm obnoxious.
Look, I came to Evanston for one reason, and that's to speak my mind. And that's exactly what I'll do. What's on my mind right now? Iowa football, that's one thing. That's on my mind.
Northwestern's #1 fan. I bleed purple. Well, I'm drinking a Loverboy now, but normally it's either a Guinness or a Smithwick's.
We are legally going to kill them in football terms. That's all I have to say.
We're gonna fight for Iowa, and Iowa guys sing. We're going to fight for Iowa, and Raptors swing.
Go Hawks! We're gonna cheer. Get them a camera. Hey, can I go interview these guys?
Yeah, I love Loverboy. It's great stuff. I'm happily married.
Guys, can I get a quick interview? We're here with
Irish Radio.
offtheball.com, and we are wondering, what's it like to be a Northwestern fan? Is it sad? Are you sad?
Well, we can't be as sad when we were ranked and then, top 5 in the country and then lost, a couple times here and there.
In Dublin, they eat haggis, don't they?
What's so good about this year for Hawkeye fans?
What's so good about this year? We are ranked in the.
What's the ranking? What's the ranking out of 25?
Right now we're 22.
22 out of 25?
Yeah, where's Northwestern?
99% graduation rate.
Cats beat Hawks by 1 million today.
Give me that.
Cats by 1 million.
We've already accepted that we might lose.
No.
Cats
by 1 million.
Cats
by 1 million.
We're gonna win. Cats by 1 million.
Cats by 1 million.
Cats by 90 at least.
I think that as Northwestern students, you start to love Northwestern as a school, and you know that no matter what, even if you win or lose, you love supporting the school.
We love the Cats.
Okay, to answer your question, we are very excited for this game. It's a great game. I can't imagine the fact that Northwestern's going to Dublin. That is unbelievable. I mean, people should be going to see this. It's a lot of fun to do this and just to be out on a great day.
Now, if I may, for you people back in Ireland that think Americans are nothing but a bunch of assholes, we kind of are.
Northwestern and Nebraska are playing each other in Dublin.
Nebraska beat us by a lot this year, but it's going to be a different game in Dublin next year.
Next year we go.
It's road trip? Be good next year. Road trip to Dublin.
Road trip to Dublin. We're all going to fly there.
I don't know how the mic works.
The entire Northwestern population is going to fly to Dublin next year. We're all going to have a great time.
Respect Ireland. We are assholes, but we will come back to Ireland several times.
If you want to see
a perfect encapsulation of American football on Irish soil. Watch Northwestern play Nebraska. It is going to sum up this great sport of ours better than I could in words. It is going to be two teams of just titanic proportions, colossuses of Midwestern corn-fed football players colliding against each other on the gridiron.
I hear all this talk from the Northwestern. It doesn't matter, guys. We're going to see what really happens in the game. Back to you, Kurt.
Yeah, that is the fans speaking before the game in Evanston.
We are assholes. Well, yeah. And the Smithix, the Lura boy guy, he was great.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you ask me if he was single? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, that's he got shouted from afar whether or not he was single. So I was trying to say, I mean, that was not me. That was not me who asked the question. Funnily enough, although I do appreciate how that could well have been the case because how could you resist? So yeah, thanks many to everybody who took part in that, and I'm sure they were all a little bit disappointed with the result on Saturday night, but they will hopefully be coming to Ireland next year. A good sway that fan group there up against Nebraska in the College Football Classic here next summer. So when we get stuck into this week, Ger, and the games coming up, we will come back to Portugal with Shane Keegan in just a moment. But All Blacks wise, I wasn't in here yesterday. I didn't get the sense of giddiness around the Japan performance. Is that something that's happening, or is everybody like, cool the jets, let's wait till Saturday and let's wait to see what actually the level of this Ireland team really is?
I think everybody got a little bit excited because we were trying not to just set piece and kick our way through Japan the way maybe we might have done under previous regimes. There were multiple offloads in that first half in particular. When the game was still up for grabs, which wasn't for very long because we scored very early on, Ireland were trying to put width on the ball and trying to keep it alive and not looking to create rucks and not committing huge numbers to the rucks and playing that type of game that Andy Dunn in particular has been talking about on this show, I don't know, maybe the best part of a decade at this stage. It was like, we have really good players. Maybe if we tried not to constantly bring the ball into contact and set up rucks, it would be better for us in the long run. I think also I was making the point that look who's fit. Look who's actually fit and in form and playing together at the same time. All our world-class players. Tyke Furlong, James Ryan's back with a massive chip in his shoulder at the lines. Caelan Doris has played some rugby consecutively. They're in the team at the same moment. And Johnny Sexton is fit and playing well. I don't think this has ever happened. Certainly not for Andy Farrell, where he's had those players all available at the same time. And he's decided, it looks like, that his number one scrum half at the moment is Jameson Gibson Park, which means that Conor Murray is going to have a bit of a chip in his shoulder. Imagine what those training sessions are like. Jack Conan has played his way into the team at 8, which means you can play Doris at 6. You've got Peter O'Mahony on the bench again, chippy about being left out, but where does he start? Ian Henderson, fully fit, available for selection, can't make the team. All of a sudden, that looks like a strong, powerful. Cian Healy's your sub. Andrew Porter was explosive. Yeah, we should be giddy. The whole point about the rugby crowd are getting carried away again with a friendly win. What a bunch of wankers. It's like, I mean, do you not follow sport because you're supposed to get excited about it? Is there not? You're not supposed to enjoy the moment where, at the start of a season in particular, anything is possible.
Is part of that sort of the rugby crowd are getting carried away with themselves, not based out of the fact that there's a big cloud of doom, a big dark cloud of doom coming on Saturday. Now, of course, the last time that big cloud of doom arrived in Dublin, they went away not very doom-filled at all, and it was one of our. This analogy was probably going nowhere. Probably around 5 minutes ago.
Oh yeah, I mean that was your best partridge moment so far.
Yeah. So
can we clip that? Tomorrow's promo? Here's what you missed on OTB AM.
Is it not just realism? Because the last time Ireland played the All Blacks, they got smashed.
Absolutely. I'm sure we're 10-point underdogs. That's the point. We're 10-point underdogs. The whole notion that anybody thinks that Ireland are going to show up and win the game is like, if a million different things go Ireland's way, and if the referees Northern Hemisphere style versus Southern Hemisphere style, and some of the issues that the All Blacks have had, I mean, the issues that the All Blacks have had are minuscule compared to the issues that we've had. But I don't know. I think this is a real Rorschach test on the inverted snobbery that all the sports in Ireland have about each other when it comes to watching another crowd enjoy themselves, or watching a row that another crowd is having, and like looking down your nose at them going, no, that never happened to us. And actually it happens all the time. Like all of the sports in Ireland are factional and tribal and snobbish. That's what our sports are, and that's us as a people, and our sports reflect that. And sometimes we all get behind one of the teams, and at the moment it feels like we're all getting behind the football team because they're trying something new, and it feels like we're getting all behind the rugby team because they're trying something new. And it's a massive week, as you say. Like, we could get smashed on Thursday and smashed again on Saturday, and there will be a pall of despair, and the YouTube comments will be like, oh, look at you guys giving us false hope, you absolute, where did you get out giving me some sense that I might enjoy an hour and a half of escape from my tiny life?
You're saying we're gonna have old man Willie Boy on our case,
and the rest.
He's been in touch this morning. He said, could you ask Ger to sit back from his laptop, please? He's upsetting the Akitas. They're dogs, right? Has old man Willie Boy posted a photo of his dogs in order to plant one tree? Would be my question to him this morning. The All Blacks, the first thing I do on All Blacks Week, Ger, and I'm sure you're the same, is go onto a website called stuff.co.nz, the greatest resource for New Zealand content and All Blacks content. Looking at their report from their win over Italy at the weekend, All Blacks versus Italy, Ian Foster's men failed to impress in disjointed performance. The author, who is Mark Hinton, says it was as ugly as pineapple on pizza for long stretches as the All Blacks fumbled their way through probably their worst performance of the season in Rome on Sunday. Ian Foster's touring New Zealanders eventually completed a comfortable enough victory to extend their perfect record. But for vast tracks, this was a messy, disjointed All Blacks performance where their vaunted attacking game was mostly blunted by a committed defensive effort from Kieran Crowley's men. So, you talk about Conor Murray having a chip on his shoulder, Peter O'Mahony with a chip on his shoulder. These All Blacks reeling from a takedown message from stuff.co.nz. There is no sight more scary in world sport.
I mean, what was the final score? 40-something, 14, 15?
47-9.
Okay, so they hammered Italy, and like it had kind of gone under our radar. We obviously didn't do enough about the ritual humiliation and spanking they handed out to the Welsh the week before. I don't know what, it was remiss of us on many fronts. Owen, I made the point yesterday that Wales obviously needed us to troll them the week before the game.
Well, I was just going to say it was the derby of the two greatest sports websites in the world, walesonline.com versus stuff.co.nz.
Well, it was, it's supposed to be a rivalry. One team needs to win occasionally. Obviously, that was never on the cards at all. And then Wales did really well to nearly beat the Springboks, only for their fan stopping them winning the game. So, look, I mean, there's a very good chance that the bookmakers are correct, and there's a 10 to 15 point win for the All Blacks at the weekend. But, like, why do we play the games? What's the point? Play the games for the excitement and to feel alive.
Yeah, like, I mean, the thing that you can, like, I mean, I agree with you to a point, and I'm sure there are definitely people on the side of the fence who are like, no, there's just waiting for the defeat to happen at the weekend and then say, you all got carried away. I genuinely just think that there is maybe a sense of caution in other corners then, just thinking about this weekend. And maybe if you look into the Japan game and what you're actually taking away from it, like they're not throwing in this new, fresher style of play just for the sake of it. I mean, maybe Japan with kind of a less physical style of play is a perfect opportunity to try something a little bit more creative out. But at the same time, it would be like a waste of time were they to try it out and not bring elements of it to the table again against the All Blacks. And I just wonder, have we completely maybe underrated some of the talents in Ireland's disposal over the last couple of years, like particularly in the forwards and some of the great hands that we saw on Saturday afternoon in particular. Are we kind of like, are we still getting blown away by a forward who can offload the ball, or have we got to the stage in Irish rugby now where we're like, it's a professional rugby player, he should be able to do something like this?
Well, I think this is exactly the same mindset that the previous coach decided that we were going to win through excellence at the set piece and not making any mistakes and a relatively conservative game plan where we would score off power plays. And there are enough opportunities in rugby with all the set pieces that gives you a good chance to win. And it was very, very successful for a long period of time. Very attritional. Like it looked for contact first. It looked for you winning that fight. And our athletes eventually wore down in both the big tournaments where there was an opportunity for us to bring this to tournament play. Maybe we should be trying to do something slightly different. And it looks like the new coach is trying to evolve the style into something which is more pleasing on the eye and potentially more successful, but has a much higher risk factor. It's exactly the same thing that's happening with the football team. It's a much higher risk factor trying to play football. It's definitely more easy on the eye. It's definitely the direction that football is going, and clearly more enjoyable for the players to play in. So I see massive parallels between the two teams this weekend, and two sellouts against two world-class teams. Like, it is as big a week for the international sports that we play as you can remember in a long time, because again, even just the carnival atmosphere that should be around both these games. Like, if the Man United fans are showing up to cheer Ronaldo on, but they're actually Ireland fans, I don't really mind too much. It's bad. I mean, so long as they cheer when Ireland score and they boo when the referee makes bad decisions, I'm all for it.
TJ Perenara, who's in the papers today, says that the All Blacks do not use 2016 or 2018 for any sort of motivation, any sort of drive against Ireland. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I mean, they spanked our asses in the World Cup. Why would they be arsed looking back before? Like, oh, you won these two games. One when we were on the complete tear in Chicago, and then another one a couple of years later. How'd that work out for you, lads?
Because
what happened in the big game?
Because high-performing athletes are complete and utter psychopaths. I mean, this is what you were saying there is logical. Okay, so
maybe they do use it for motivation, but like that's idiotic, right? Again, I suppose you go back to Paddy Andrews saying, when you're in it, nothing makes sense. Like, those Mayo boys are coming up to steal our All-Irelands. And, like, whatever you do to get that little bit of hate, and if they need that, and if that's more important to them, if that outweighs Ireland being humiliated in the World Cup, then it's a funny old game.
Yeah.
If that's giving them an advantage over that time they beat us, the 16-0 they beat us, the time that they beat us with the score in the last second, and all the other scores as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's too much.
We're going to have more on that with Ronan O'Gara around 8:30 this morning. Bit of reaction to our chat earlier on. Trevor's been in touch to say Brendan Rodgers for Villa, get in before Manchester United, just like when they missed Conte. We'll get your comments to Shane Keegan, who's going to be talking about Portugal next, and to Ronan O'Gara a little bit later on. It is 8:02 on this Tuesday morning. We'll take a quick break.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
He's a lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
OTB AM
with Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
3 minutes past 8, you're very welcome back. We are looking ahead to the Republic of Ireland against Portugal in their World Cup qualification match this Thursday night. Delighted to welcome Shane Keegan back to the show. Good morning, Shane.
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Let's get stuck into this straight away. Your confidence/hope levels, are they still at a high point given what happened away to Portugal, or is this script entirely ripped up and it's very much back to the drawing board, or feeling a little bit precarious about the opposition we have this week?
Oh, look, I think you would have to be reasonably confident heading into it. I think we saw enough in that performance originally against Portugal. I know we were undone by that man again at the death, but it was a very, very impressive performance for the vast majority of the game, no doubt about it. And then I suppose you look back at the two most recent games, and that's certainly helped optimism build even further. And you can see why all of a sudden there's a very, very different narrative around this team. Now it takes very, very little for that narrative to change again, that's for sure. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Portugal are an extremely good side. They're capable of hammering Manny's a good team. If Ireland had a very poor result here, and then followed it, and then didn't beat Luxembourg. All of a sudden, the narrative completely and utterly flips. But at this moment in time, it's hard to see that happen, because the team seem to be in a good place, and the confidence. I suppose, to be honest with you, the confidence I think that they've kind of always had. Now, results will eat away at that, but you have to admire how they have continually come out and backed what the team are trying to do, and backed Stephen Kenny and backed themselves as players. And that confidence that they've kind of always had now seems to be shared by a large percentage of the fan base as well.
Do you expect there to be a difference to the system that Stephen Kenny will employ at home to Portugal than the one he employed away from home?
No, I don't. And when you say system, it's, I suppose it's important that people kind of realise that when we talk about the system now, we're not necessarily talking about a change in shape. Stephen Kenny can use the exact same shape, but extremely different game plans. The shape, I think, will stay very, very much the same. And I also think the game plan will stay very much the same, which is what we got the last time. It's also, by the way, what we got against Azerbaijan, which is sitting off, allowing the opposition to have the ball to a certain extent, certainly into as far as the middle part of the field. I don't think we'll sit on the edge of the 18, but we will probably sit off. And the big thing that the last time round was protecting the middle zone of the field. The five central players will have their work cut out, but they did extremely good jobs the last time. Now, look, it's that saying that when you have a duvet that doesn't cover the whole bed, you have to give up certain parts of the field at any given time, and it does mean that we leave ourselves that little bit more open down the outsides. And as we've seen with Ronaldo's heading, it's so hard to keep tabs on him for 90 minutes. But I do agree that it's the right idea. Packing the centre of the field is definitely the way to go. And I won't say we'll completely play counter attack, or we won't completely rely on set pieces. But I do think they are probably going to be our two main attacking threats in this one. But I think the side will be okay with that. I think you've got defenders who are very, very confident in their ability. Obviously, you look at the likes of a Shane Duffy, whose game has just completely and utterly turned around in the last 12 months. And Robadelli I think he got a full 90 minutes in the last game for Norwich, and a good result. That's bound to bring his confidence on leaps and bounds. And John Egan just always looks like a really, really confident, solid player. And then in front of that, they're working so hard that they'll try and give them as much protection as possible. And look, I'm sure we'll move on to the attacking side of things in a minute. But if we can get the defensive side of it right first, it'll put us in with a decent chance. Yeah, we will get onto the attacking side of things. Just a couple of things there that you mentioned. You talk about covering the midfield areas. It did feel that in the first game, I'm not sure did Portugal get it wrong in that department, Shane, that they overloaded the attack, certainly, but it did feel that Ireland could, to a point, live with them in midfield, because I think it was like 4 attackers that they had on the pitch and 2 in midfield, and Ireland just had the extra man there for the night. So if they were to go with 3 traditional midfielders, so not Bruno Fernandes basically, and their two normal midfielders, do you think that Ireland could potentially struggle a little bit more in that department, or how do you see that potential change playing out? Yeah, I actually, you're on the ball. I actually think the most interesting piece of team news on the night is going to be how they set up. I think we can be fairly nailed down with how we're going to go about it ourselves, but a big indicator of their intentions is going to be around that decision around Bruno Fernandes. But you can understand where they were coming from the last time. Obviously, he didn't have a great Euros, but they would have been looking at us, and they would have been looking at our struggles, and they would have been thinking, right, there's no way we need 3 central players here. We can sacrifice one of them for a more attacking player, and that did backfire on them on the night. We dealt with that extremely well. I don't know. I think it's really 50-50 as to whether they go with the 2 and a 10, or whether they go with the 3 in the middle of the field. I mean, how do you? I know United are struggling, but almost anything good that comes from United seems to come an awful lot from that Bruno Fernandes Ronaldo link-ups again. So I don't know. I think they might start him again, and I do think that would suit Ireland again, because we've shown that we're able to deal with it. But I don't know. I just think the manager is going to look at Fernandes and maybe look. If they're worth their salt at all, obviously what they'll have done is they'll have sat down in the performance analysis suite, and they'll have gone through, right, what worked and what didn't work. And maybe he says, okay, rather than us changing system, we need to do what we were doing, but to a much higher level and to a much higher extent. And when I'm involved in football, I always love playing a team again shortly after you've played them, because it's a fantastic chance to, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, right? How are we going to do that differently? We know they like to do this, we know they like to do that. So, if they've done a huge amount of analysis like that, maybe it's not a case of dropping Bruno Fernandes, it's just a case of trying to use him more cleverly, and that could give us a good test.
One of the things that's been a hallmark of the era so far is that Stephen Kenny hasn't really had everybody all available at the same time. There's been injuries, there's been COVID. This is one of those rare occasions where actually all of a sudden most of the central midfielders are available. And it's going to be very interesting to see exactly who he picks here, because he was very, very strong in his praise of Jeff Hendrick after the last game. But is Hendrick actually one of his first choice midfielders?
Yeah, look, it's finally a headache. It's a headache that he probably hasn't had, Jared, at any stage up to now, that's for sure. But it's a really, really good one to have. Look, I would have said, only a couple of games back, I would have said Josh Cullen was undroppable. I thought he was doing a fantastic job in the job description that he'd been given. Not setting the world alight, but just doing the ABCs really, really well. I think Hendrick has been really, really excellent. I think he's really, really stepped up. And again, I suppose it depends how much faith Stephen places in players' Ireland performances versus their club performance, or their lack of club performances, as is the case sometimes. But the one that's obviously come in to disrupt that then has been Horan, and he was really, really good last time round. Really, really good last time round. I just think Stephen might look at it as a horses for courses kind of thing. Obviously, you're looking at the two challenges, and they're very, 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 very different games. The requirements of what we're going to have to do in both games, obviously enough, you're looking at maybe having a third of the ball or less in the first one, and then maybe looking to have 2/3 of the ball or more in the second one. I think he will go Cullen Hendrick for the first one, and then I think Cullen could actually lose out. I think we could see Horan Hendrick for the second one. I think Hendrick is probably in the box seat to be the man that potentially starts the two of them.
You've kind of half explained it there, Shane, but Horan for Luxembourg and Cullen for Portugal. What are the specific attributes that differ between the two of them? If you take away the set pieces, what are the different attributes that differ that would lead you to that decision?
Yeah, I just think Cullen is that bit more defensively tuned in. I think it's his natural position. I go back to a game, I was going to say a year ago, it's probably possibly even pre-COVID now at this stage, so it was. There was an Irish 21s game in Tala against Italy. I think it was Eoin, and he was playing it was the first time I'd seen him live, as in I was in the stadium at the time, and Josh Cullen, and I was so impressed with him. He's go back a bit. He's that sort of Makelele character that there's absolutely no problem whatsoever in me sacrificing my game. I'll do the dog work here. I'll make sure I'm in the right positions as much as I possibly can. And he allows the rest to go and express themselves. Now, he can use the ball as well. That's not to say he can't use the ball. I just think his natural instincts are to try and sense danger and try and position himself to stop danger. And obviously with a team with as much attacking quality as Portugal, I think that's a big help. In terms of being more open and expansive, though, I think Horan's performance against Qatar was really, really excellent. It was good to see it. We hadn't seen that from him in a while, and I suppose, to be honest, we hadn't seen a huge amount from Jeff Hendrick in a while either. So it was great to see the two of them do so well in that game. And I know it's only Qatar, but I don't think we're in a position where we can call anybody only anymore. And their use to the ball was really, really good. Like Horan, he's the guy who'll come and pick up a ball off of let's say one of the centre halves, let's say John Egan. He'll pick it up off of John Egan, and he'll shape maybe to go down the left hand side of the field, and all of a sudden it's a big massive diag all the way out to the right to the Matt Doherty's. Josh Cullen has a lot of attributes. He's not going to do that for you. He's going to go ping, ping and ping, and he might help you get there eventually, but it'll be after 4 or 5 passes, whereas Conor Horan can do that in one pass, and that could be the kind of thing that we need in that second one where the opposition are set up so defensively.
It's really interesting.
He's the third midfielder. Sorry, Jimmy McGrath obviously played really well against Portugal in the first game. Comes out of the team, comes back in, keeps his place, and then does he keep his place, or does he look for somebody like Jason Knight who's back and available? And what do you think there?
Yeah, I'd be going McGrath without a doubt, and even the way you phrase the question makes it interesting, because you're calling him a third midfielder. Is he a third midfielder or is he a second 10? I mean, technically, I think the setup will be 3-4-2-1 with your 2 10s behind your 9. But I think the responsibilities of those 2 10s, the roles that he has to carry out, would be dramatically different, and that's why I think Jamie McGrath fits that profile so well, because what I was going to say he's capable of playing 2 possessions at once. To be honest with you, I think he certainly in the Qatar game, where you didn't have Adam Idah starting, he's capable of playing 3 positions in the one game, Ger, because what he was doing was he was coming extremely deep in the build-up phase and giving us that extra body that we needed in the build-up phase and helping us get out, let's say. Then when we were progressing the ball over the halfway line, he was appearing in the more traditional number 10 position and picking up good little spots in between their midfield and their back line. But then on top of that, if you look back at the game, because Robinson likes to go wandering so much, and again, we touch on him a bit more in a minute, but because he likes to go wandering so much, he won't stay as the 9. And when he was going wandering, Jamie McGrath was appearing as our furthest forward player and almost in a traditional centre forwards position at the time. And I just thought the intelligence of his movement was really, really excellent. But the big thing on top of that is, because, as we say, we're going to maybe be backs to the wall, is a lot of the time your more technical players and your more intelligent players, okay, they might be found a little bit for work rate. Jamie McGrath will not be found wanting on the work rate thing either. He really, really won't. So he'll get right in alongside the 2 lads, whichever 2 he goes with, when we don't have the ball. And I think, to be honest, actually, that was a little bit of an issue that we've had at times, is that sometimes the 2 lads can get slightly abandoned. And when the opposition shift us to one side, there's room then on that other side of them, something that Man City did incredibly well against United at the weekend. They exploit that little bit of space on the opposite side to the build-up. When we've only got 2 bodies in the middle of the field, we can be in trouble with that a lot. We see an awful lot of opposition teams getting an awful lot of shots from distance around the edge of our 18. Whereas I think Jamie will drop it in and make that a 3 when we don't have it. And then I think that gives us a hell of a better footing. I think he was brilliant the last day.
Yeah, he really was. Like, it's interesting, just to kind of round up this midfielder section, when you talk about the fact that Hourihane would be a better option than Cullen for the second of these 2 games. Do you think Stephen Kenny would have been prone to trying Hourihane out in that Qatar game anyway, had Cullen been available? Because it seemed to me, Shane, that there was a little bit of opportunism from Hourihane on that point. Now, you have to take your opportunities when they come your way, and as you say, he was excellent in that game. But it did feel like that Cullen was Kenny's guy up until that point, up until he wasn't available for that Qatar game.
Yeah, I think Hourihane definitely would have started that game. I just think the interesting thing is, would it have been Hendrick or would it have been Cullen that would have been sacrificed for him? Because Cullen is very, very much your designated 6, whereas Hourihane can play 6, 8. I think, look, with his club, I think he's played 10 a hell of a lot, so he is. So there's a lot more flexibility in terms of the duties that you give him. So could those 2 play together? They absolutely could. They had no problem with Cullen and Hourihane playing together. So it would have been interesting to see which of the 2 would have been sacrificed from the previous game. But I think he would have been given a roll of the dice anyway. I think I think Stephen would have been looking ahead and saying, okay, it might be injuries, it might be a game plan, but we need more than just 2 players locked in here.
I'm sure it won't be as linear as this, Shane, but at the outset, you were basically saying Hendrick, Cullen, McGrath for Portugal, and then Hendrick, Hourihane, McGrath for Luxembourg. Yeah. Just in terms of the skill sets of the players, to me that would make sense. But look, I'm certainly not going to try and second guess Stephen. He's the one working on the training ground. He's the one seeing what's happening, who's in form, and all of that kind of thing. Well, talk us through then how that's impacting on where you're thinking with regards to the attackers.
Yeah, look, again, I think so. Jamie, I think becomes a half and half. He's a midfielder when we don't have it. He's a second 10 when we do have it. And as I say, I think that's why he's ideal for that role. I suppose the big thing is what does he do with Callum Robinson? He was outstanding as the floating 9 against Qatar, almost a false 9 to use the terms that the more fancy sides are using. But he was equally, if not better, in the previous game where he was playing as one of the 2 10s with Idah as the 9. And look, I think Adam Elliott's last performance for us was his poorest to date, probably. Things just didn't go quite as well for him as they had been in previous games, but I think up till then he'd been really, really good. He, in performances that weren't fantastic, he was regularly the one shining light. And I think he'll stay. So I think we'll see that McGrath, Robinson behind Idah. As I say, with McGrath and Robinson doing very different roles. Robinson very much given almost, I won't say quite a free role, but he certainly won't have as much defensive responsibilities as Jamie McGrath will. He'll be allowed to wander left, wander right, and that was what he was absolutely superb at, was just picking up pockets of space. I mean, the amazing thing was that he, against Azerbaijan, he played one half on one side of the field and he played the other half on the other side of the field when Horgan came off, I think it was at half time. But in both halves, he was causing the problems on the opposite side of the field that he was nominally named to play in. And that's just down to really, really, really clever lateral movement. In other words, overloading. If he was on the right-hand side of the 210s, it was when he was popping up over on the left-hand side. I mean, you look at the goals. They came from when he popped up over on the left-hand side, even though he was playing on the right. And then in the second half, they moved him to the right, and they moved him to the left, and he actually started causing the problems on the right-hand side. You remember he put in one fantastic cross over there, and should have got a goal from over that side as well. So I just think he's shown an intelligence of movement, and I realise it's only a couple of games. Look, it's only a couple of games. We can't bill him as the greatest thing since sliced bread just yet, but he couldn't possibly have impressed me any more in those two games. The one other thing on that as well is that the other reason that combination works so well is that, again, Idah's selfless running is really excellent. When Robinson wanders central, Idah has no problem running out and doing the flank for him, both with and without the ball. So I think the connection that those two players have going is a real positive for us over the last few games.
Is there any question about who's going to start at full back? Now Seamus Coleman is fit, straight back in the team. Matt Doherty comes off the bench and plays left wing back at the weekend. Is that kind of the perfect scenario here, or is James McLean getting in ahead of one of the lads?
I think that is the big. I would be fairly confident in being able to name the rest of the side. I think there is a question mark there, to be honest with you. For all his flaws, and I'm well aware of all his flaws, and I tend to get a bit of social media stick when I stand up for him. I like James McLean. I like what he gives us. I understand that there's limitations to it. But I thought he was very, very good across the course of those two games. He came into them probably under a serious amount of stick and getting a serious amount of grief. And I think you'd be hard pressed for anybody to say that he wasn't, over the balance of the two games, right up there as one of our best. I think he'll be unfortunate to lose out. Matt Doherty is certainly playing well. I suppose not getting a huge amount of chance with Spurs, but he looks to have a level of freedom and a level of confidence when he pulls on an Irish jersey that's way above what he's doing at Tottenham at the moment. So would you like to see him in the side? You would. And then look, I'm just not going to make the call on this one, because you'd be perfectly happy with two of those three starting, because they all offer you something different. Seamus just never ever lets you down, and he's so solid, and particularly in a Portugal game where you're looking at having to be dependable and having to be error proof and all of that kind of thing. He'll give you all of that, and his leadership qualities are immense. So I think there's a headache, but a positive headache in terms of making a decision there. Rather than saying, oh sugar, who do we play as our two, I think it's best of luck deciding which one you're leaving out there, Stephen. Whichever two you go with, you'd be confident that they'll deliver.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a range of exciting options in a number of different positions. So just one last question I had anyway on the team that you're looking at over the next couple of games, Shane, is just on Adam Idah, and you mentioned there his struggles in the last game for Ireland. That's totally down to the type of game, though, isn't it? That this sort of backs to the wall, needing that maybe a little bit more of a direct nature to our game against Portugal is what'll bring Adam Idah into things, because he was so good that night in Faro that is the thing that maybe should excite Ireland fans going into Thursday, more so than being concerned about any recent performances in the green shirt.
Yeah. Look, he's your ideal player in terms of being under pressure and needing an out ball. He actually played in that game that I was singing Cullen's praises for the 21s, as I say, way back whenever it was, a year and a half to 2 years ago. And again, I actually remember coming away from it that night, and there'd been a massive amount of hype around Parrott at the time, who was just kind of breaking through, and Aaron Connolly, who was just breaking through. And I think I might have actually wrote a piece on it at the time. I thought that Idah's performance that night showed, and Idah was well down the pecking order behind these two at the time. I remember thinking, no, do you know what? In terms of what we require from a centre forward, this guy is the one. This is the one who can do it, because he's capable of doing all three kind of aspects of the game. Now we'll come to the one that's missing a little bit, but he can drop in and show when you need somebody, that when you're trying to find somebody's feet, he can drop into little spaces there and say, yeah, fizz it into me here, and he's got a good touch and he takes it under control. He can also just pin his centre back, because he's a good, strong boy, and he can just kind of latch on and say, go on, put it up to my chest here, or if there's a runner, put it up to my head and I'll try and win the flick on. And then he's also got the pace and the willingness to say, you know what, just put it down the channel and I'll chase it down there and I'll get us a throw in the final third. So I think he gives you so many options in terms of trying to get out of your own half of the field. Now, look, the one thing he's probably not is he's not an out-and-out natural goal scorer who's going to get you a huge amount of goals. But certainly for the Portugal game, he completely and utterly fits the bill. I think there might be a question mark over whether he then follows up and starts the Luxembourg one as well. I think there are options there that it might be mixed up, but for the Portugal one, I'd go as far as to say he's arguably going to be our most important player, because if he can, revert back to that form that he has shown us during the campaign, and get us up the field, that gives us a footing in the game. And if he gets us into the final third, well, now you're getting your corners, now you're getting your throws, now you're getting your free kicks. Whereas, if he lets the head drop for any particular reason, or life at Norwich is starting to get to him, and he's not at the top of his game, well, now, how do we get a footing in the game at all? So I think he's arguably the most important player in the game.
And you've got Callum Robinson working off him, as opposed to Aaron Connolly, which we had in Faro. And no disrespect to Connolly, but Robinson's finishing at the moment and his end product is clearly far superior. So you're painting a pretty exciting picture here, Sheahan, for Thursday night. I'm not going to lie.
I hope this is not played back the following morning if things were to go wrong. But yeah, look, you'd have to be quite happy about it. And look, the game is a sellout for a reason. There's an excitement around this team at the moment. And it's not, I won't say it's built on sand either. We're starting to show real signs of a team that are gelling, real patterns of play. Against Qatar, I think in the Azerbaijan game, it was kind, for me, it was all about Callum Robinson. I thought he was outstanding. But in the Qatar game after that, there were so many players who did really well, and there was a real tactical flexibility about us. The way the centre backs were stepping forward confidently with the ball, that this mad move that we saw 2 or 3 times with Shane Duffy appearing up at centre forward. The movement, even, we started to see that thing that you see a lot in the Premier League at the moment, of the wing backs coming in very narrow and coming in through the centre of the field, while either an attacker pulls out into the wide area that they've left, or the centre back goes around them. We were starting to see loads and loads of things like that happen. Now, again, I think we need to wait until the Luxembourg game probably to see that kind of stuff again. It's going to be a very different game against Portugal, but there's real signs of a team taking shape and a proper game plan emerging. And you'd have to be reasonably confident and really hopeful that we'll see 2 positive results that'll send us into the new year with those confidence levels still very high.
Yep, absolutely. Just one last thing, Shane, before we let you go. One of the other big stories from Irish football over the last little while is the announcement that Ruud Dokter is going to depart as high performance director next month. We might get into this in a bit more depth with you another time, but just generally, what sort of candidate would you be looking for as his replacement, and what his replacement may actually bring to the table?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I think the point has probably been made in a few places already. It was the first conclusion I jumped to when I saw the news that Dokter was gone. Was aren't Shelbourne very lucky that they got their business done nice and early with Damien Duff? I think Damien Duff potentially ticked a huge amount of boxes in terms of somebody who could have filled that role. A real knowledge of the domestic game here, a real idea that would fall in line with Stevens. Obviously, not that that's the be all and end all, at the moment, but it does help if the person going into that role shares a lot of similarities in terms of how they want the game played, as Stephen does. Look, I would show my biasness here, and I would say that I would like it to be an Irish man this time around. I think, look, you can't cut off your nose to spite your face if a fantastic candidate emerges from elsewhere, so be it. But I suppose I'm saying it as an Irish, sometimes I was going to call myself a working Irish coach. I'm not quite that at the moment, but a sometimes working Irish coach. You want to see your own doing well, and you'd love to see somebody. I mean, there's been some fantastic technical director appointments at League of Ireland level over the last few years. You've got the likes of your Alan Caffreys and your Will Clarks, Ger O'Brien's, guys like these who've done fantastic, really superb jobs at the clubs that they're at. Is it too much of a jump to jump from there right up to a role like this? Possibly. I think you will, naturally enough, I think you'll hear Brian Kerr's name possibly been mentioned in some quarters, and that's certainly worth looking into. It's certainly worth looking into whether Brian has more irons in the fire than anybody, whether he'd have the time to take on a role like that or have the appetite for it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's worth somebody having a conversation with him. So look, there's plenty of options out there. I do think one has got away, no doubt about that, with Duffer. It'll be interesting to see who to go with on. I don't have a definite for you on what direction they'll go there. It'll be interesting to see.
What's Dokter's legacy going to be? Is it essentially setting up the underage leagues and that civil war that's happened with the schoolboys? Is that in years to come will we point that was a difficult decision ultimately for the good of Irish football, or is there something else that we should be pointing to?
Yeah, look, depending on your opinion of Ruud Dokter, you can make a perfectly plausible argument as to why his tenure was a failure, and you can make a perfectly plausible argument as to why his tenure was a success, depending on which angle you want to come from. I wouldn't always have agreed with the way he went about things, that's for sure. I remember having an argument with him in a room in trying to think, was it in the Aviva that meeting was held, or was it in Abbottstown? Anyway, at the time, League of Ireland managers were brought in, and he was brought in, and there was conversations about things. And I remember that one of the conversations was around the decision to go with full-size goals at, I think it was under 11 at the time, which was something that I was completely against. I had a younger brother who was a goalkeeper and was a virgin, and I just thought it was insanity putting a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old into a full-size goal. But Ruud's argument was football is about goals, and we all want to see lots of goals, so let's make the goal bigger and then we'll get lots of goals. And I just we had a right kind of to and fro over that one on that occasion. He also was very, very strong on choosing one sport very, very early on, which is, to be honest, which is something I would have been, again, completely and utterly against. I love seeing kids play as many sports as they possibly can for as long as they can, certainly up until their mid-teens anyway. I think it develops their all-round abilities, but he seemed to want to funnel them into an elite path of soccer only from very early on. And yet I would shove the two of those things to one side, lads, and I would say his ability to make what I always thought would be impossible, which was to wrestle the control into the direction of League of Ireland clubs for the underage development rather than the big schoolboy clubs. And look, there's plenty of people associated with those big schoolboy clubs who can argue why it wasn't a good move. For me, for somebody who's based outside of Dublin and who has a massive interest in a pathway for a young fella from Portlaoise and a pathway for a young fella from Kilkenny, and whose brother, my brother lads, went up at 11. Like, he was travelling to Dublin 3 times a week at 11 years of age. He went up there for two years, under 11 and under 12, and great, helped his progression and all that, and won DDSL titles and delighted with himself and all that. But as a person who, as a child who was growing, I mean, that was madness really when you look back at it. And if Dokter hadn't managed to make the changes that he's made, that would still essentially be the only pathway for a talented young player to try and make their way in the game, whereas now it's so different. You know, you've got these really excellent systems right across the country. The fantastic League of Ireland underage sides all playing against each other, and pretty much anybody who's got talent now, lads, can go into an elite setup. I know people don't like the word elite sometimes, but go into a strong underage setup that probably no more than a half an hour from their doorstep, and I think that's been hugely positive.
Shane Keegan, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Shane Keegan there on the line, looking ahead to Ireland against Portugal. It is, of course, a Thursday night game this week. It is a massive fixture for Stephen Kenny, and then Luxembourg on Sunday night. Just to tell you that the Koi Gig Pod on OTB Sports is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the women's national team. It's our new show dedicated to the WSL and the Irish national team. And a very special episode with Katie McCabe is live a little bit later on today, so make sure to check that out. Let's just run you through some of the back pages this morning and some of the sports pages. We'll start with OTB Sports this morning. It was worse than Liverpool. John Giles talking last night about Manchester United's loss to Manchester City. Meanwhile, Paul Pogba suffers thigh injury while on international duty with France. Pat Nevin, also on the show last night, was talking about David Moyes, and he says, I doubt he would take it right now, whether or not he would hop into the hot seat at Manchester United if he were offered it today. Matt Williams, meanwhile, says Ireland can beat New Zealand, and Jamison Gibson Park is critical to that. We'll be joined by Ronan O'Gara very shortly to get stuck into those talking points. And Rio Ferdinand feels it's time for Solskjaer to go. I don't see any identity, he says. So let's have a look at some of the newspapers then this morning. The Irish Times lead with the rugby. TJ Paranara says 2016 and 2018 losses to Ireland are irrelevant. Jerry Thornley says Men in Black bring a buzz and their big guns to Dublin. And you've also got Gibson Park here saying facing New Zealand is what I've dreamt of since I came to Ireland. So that is the Irish Times this morning. Let's move you on to the back of the Irish Sun. Cullen out all the stops, supply and our demands. Josh Cullen in front of the media yesterday. Ireland bidding to cut off Ronaldo's supply line to avoid history repeating itself on Thursday night. Howe's calling it tune. That's the story there, and Eddie Howe taking over at Newcastle. And Norway back, writes Neil Custis. Solskjaer flew out to Norway yesterday as Rio Ferdinand called on him to be jettisoned as Red Devils manager. The back of the Mirror, time's up. Rio, I do not see an identity. It's time he passed on the baton. And time's up. How I'm excited to be new tune boss, but hard work starts now. And then there's more from Josh Cullen yesterday speaking at the Republic of Ireland press conference. The Irish Daily Star goes with pack your bags, Ole. Ferdinand feels it's time for United to end Solskjaer era. And Maggie Turef Cavan replay. This says Maggie Farrelly will achieve yet another first in Gaelic games when she becomes the first woman to referee a men's senior county final. She has been appointed to take charge of the replay between Ramor United and Gowna, and duo back new Kenny deal. That's Josh Cullen and Jason Knight both saying that Stephen Kenny should be given a new deal. And that is the lead on the back of the Irish Daily Mail as well. Deal Kenny in. Players back boss as FAI chiefs mull over new contract. And they've also got a story there on Aston Villa. They're out to woo Gerrard away from Rangers. Now, at 8:38 on this Tuesday morning, I can tell you that Irish menswear company Benetti has announced a 2-year partnership with former Munster, Ireland and British and Irish Lions player Ronan O'Gara. He's going to front Benetti's new campaign and its autumn-winter 2021 collection, which is available at featured retailers nationwide and exclusively online at benetti.ie. I'm delighted to say that Ronan O'Gara is with us now. Ronan, a very good morning to you.
Hey, Eoin, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. We were chatting a little bit earlier on about the psychology of All Blacks Week, and this is an interesting one in the context of Ireland over the last couple of years, because obviously the monkey has been firmly taken off the back if you look at it in the context of 2016 and 2018, but then you look at their most recent result and it was a pretty humbling one in a World Cup quarter-final. So where is that Irish psychology at in our relationship with the All Blacks?
I think it's all to play for, Owen. I think those games are an awful long time ago, and I think the psychology, as I said, has completely changed. The performance in the World Cup, be it against New Zealand, was probably predictable in the fact that the team was on a serious downward curve. So irrespective. I would think, be it the All Blacks, be it South Africa, be it Australia, be it England, be it France, the losses in that competition were Japan and New Zealand. But as I know too well, it's something we've never got close to mastering, and it remains a massive frustration for anyone involved with Irish rugby. The underperformances at World Cup, especially 2011 being an obvious example, where it was Wales and Wellington with a quarter-final game, and we didn't get over the line. So it's hugely frustrating. But in terms of getting back to your question, I think I see it as a 50-50 game, and the fact that New Zealand playing Ireland in Dublin on a wet November evening, or hopefully even if it's a dry, it'll probably make it a better opportunity to see if we'll see more of what Ireland produced last weekend in the face of, I would think, a very passive defence.
How much are you reading into what Ireland produced last Saturday then? Is it something that you're saying to yourself, right, against better opposition, that style will still very much be there, but obviously it won't maybe count for as much on the scoreboard, or do you think we'll see significant tweaks this weekend?
Yeah, I was thinking of this question during the week, because I struggle sometimes when I watch sport and I listen to it, and a lot of people comment, well, this team never had a plan B. And it's something that always fascinates me, is that, and I know well, when you get to a final and you revert to plan B, but if you have such belief in plan A and you're trying to implement plan A, it's very, very hard to devote any time at all during the week to plan B, because plan A involves, I suppose, 23 players knowing their role inside out, and that never happens because you never get perfection in a game and you never get close to it. But I think I was taken by surprise, last weekend, because I think the Lions rugby of the summer left such a negative impression on me that if that's the way top rugby is played, the game is in trouble. But to see Ireland play like that, and maybe expectations were low and I was caught a little bit off guard, but I think for Ireland to play the way they did and to appreciate, I suppose, where the space was, made it such an enjoyable 40 minutes. And it came a little bit unstuck in the second half, but still a mightily impressive performance.
What elements impress you the most about it?
I think the willingness to play what they see, and it's very easy to say that, but I think before, a lot of these people would have been such structured players that I probably didn't think it was possible in Andy Farrell's probably time, that he was able to get people that were probably so robotic into playing a heads-up game of rugby. And I think that was probably I wouldn't say a new dawn, but it was as close you could see to playing what was in front of you as you ever were. Because the Lions, James Lowe was running and was offering. I think that's very hard to replicate in training on, and I think his lines may be different depending on what a defender did to him, because you could see it was probably the unpredictability of where he was popping up. I think caught the Japanese off guard, and you can't say Japan are a really poor team, because they ran Australia close the week previously. So the most definitely. I think if you beat them by 20 points, a lot of people will kind of go, okay, that's a good day. But to absolutely dismantle them and blow them off the park, I think a lot of people are kind of going, this team is beginning to shift gears, I think.
That's really interesting what you say there about some of the players who you thought maybe didn't have that in their locker, or maybe stylistically you weren't expecting to see them play in such a manner. So do you think that maybe this has been something that's been worked on behind the scenes for quite some time, and maybe just with the England game at the end of the Six Nations and now obviously back out in this November internationals, that the Andy Farrell and maybe Mike Catt tenures are just starting to provide fruition at this point, and it just takes that little bit of time?
Yeah, of course it does, but I think it needs probably a lot of alignment of coaches too, and I wouldn't underestimate, even though he's a good friend of mine, Paul O'Connor, because I think to play that game too, you have to kind of drained the energy out of the opposition's legs. And you could see the maul was very effective at times at the weekend, but then I suppose the kind of dummy maul to moving the ball to width, we didn't really know watching the game, was it going to be a drive, or was it going to be a shift drive, or was it going to be a drive to midfield, or was it going to be a drive to width, or was it going to be a drive to a kicking game, or was it going to be a drive to Gibson Park peeling off with the ball, or to Ronan Keller with the ball. So there was a number of huge, I suppose, variations to the game. But I think the big thing for me was the tempo and their willingness to keep the ball alive and play the ball with a tackle. It was another probably point that I wanted to raise, in the fact that, I mean, that's not to say that Joe Schmidt, because I have huge time for Joe Schmidt, because as a coach, he's an extremely brilliant coach, and but he puts such emphasis on the detail around the ruck and not believing in offloading the ball, and that's his philosophy on the game. And he beat New Zealand on that, and he got Ireland to number 1 ranked in the world, and that's a different way of playing the game. And for me, for this team to probably go to the other extreme now, it makes it fascinating to see which way we will go in the future, because the strength of Smith was his detail in the game, and he got buy-in from his players. If you don't have buy-in, you're not going to get anywhere. But I think we saw up to the game on Saturday, Ireland were probably looking to play a different way, probably struggling a little bit to implement it. But then I think you went from probably a C grade to an A minus grade. And the only reason an A grade probably was the fact of the opposition. But you can be sure on Saturday night, when we have a look at the review of the game, again, if Ireland are to play similarly to the way they did against Japan, I think it'll be... you'll be looking at a victorious Irish team.
I think the other thing, Ronan, to talk about is the availability of the personnel. This was really the first time that there was a clean bill of health from the coach's perspective, that he could implement that game plan, and he had all his world-class players available to him and in form at the same time. So I've made this point a couple of times. Furlong was available, James Ryan is available, playing with a bit of a chip in his shoulder and fit. Caelan Doris starts, and Johnny Sexton is fully fit and playing well. I don't think he's had those 4 in certainly to start a match and finish a game if he'd wanted them to. Just how important is that when you're a coach and you're trying to implement a game plan?
That's interesting. And is that, you've obviously data to back that up, you have?
Well, Caelan Doris came on and made his debut and got knocked out after 6 or 7 minutes, so he didn't play a full game. And then he came back last year in the summertime when the Lions were away. So they obviously didn't have those. You would have had some combination of them all playing at some time?
I think the point is deeper than that, though. I think it's a mindset. I think it's a complete shift. I don't think, irrespective of 4 outstanding players, that you mean a game plan shift is very, very different. You set up differently, and I think you have to train your mind very differently to how you're going about it. And I think it was just so refreshing at times not to go to a box kick. And I think you can see that Andy Farrell and his coaching team won a lot of new supporters at the weekend, because I suppose with the ambition they played with, and I suppose the endeavour they played with, and their capacity, I suppose, to see space better than they have in the past. And I think what's imperative this weekend is that the Japanese game is a starting point and a new base for playing that kind of rugby, because it leads interestingly into genetically Irish players. We don't have a Winnie Antonio or a Will Skelton, for example, a La Rochelle against Leinster, where we put a huge emphasis on winning collisions. But you look at what Paul Connell and Mike Catt is trying to do. They're trying to probably win space and run holes, as opposed to before we might have ran straight into people to get the ball over the line to win prick ruck ball. But now you could see that there was a lovely variation in terms of picking holes and the active pivots outside the backs or behind the forwards, creating I suppose indecision in defenders' minds, made it a day on the front foot for all the Irish players.
I was thinking about that point you made about not having a Will Skelton type player earlier on, because 5 of Ireland's starting 8 forwards started for Leinster against you guys last year in the European semi-final. So what did you implement on that day? Obviously, having someone like Skelton available is a huge asset, but I guess tactically, what did you guys implement to nullify the threat of 5 of those forwards that are lining out as Ireland starters at the moment?
It's tiny margins you're talking about. It's very tiny margins.
Right.
We needed to be accurate and try and get our first 2 phases right, and then if you know on the third phase that it's a Skelton or an Antonio carrying, you have a good chance you're going to win the collision, because even if you have a Joss van der Fleer or you have a Ronan Kelleher, just by the law of physics, the bigger man is probably going to win that collision. Sometimes people were saying, well, no, the technique will always win, but sometimes when you keep hammering, I suppose, a big ball at the door gets broken down by the bigger man. So but what the Irish team have is probably, and the Leinster team, they have massive fitness and they have great detail in their game. And you can see that at the weekend where you just saw that, playing ball out of the tackle, the difference it makes to the defensive line. They have no chance of getting back to come off the line again. You can do it once, but then if you do, there was, I think, several periods of passages of the game where the ball was played out of the tackle 3 or 4 times, and the Japanese were completely chasing shadows. They were gone.
How important is Gibson Park in all this, and what he brings to it? Because they've definitely made a point of making Gibson Park at the start second choice, and now it looks like very close to being first choice scrum half. They've shown a lot of faith in him, even when maybe he wasn't first choice for Leinster. They were still picking him, so he's their guy.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and I'm not as up to speed as you are on this, because I'm probably watching it not with the detail that you're watching, to be brutally honest with you. But for the minute, he took his chance at the weekend, but I thought it looked like, I think what has happened from the weekend is that there are probably new selection laws or new selection rules in terms of, I would say the team to play New Zealand will be very, very similar, if not the exact same, 23 or close to that did the business against the Japanese. But I think to remain in your place, you want to keep producing the goods. So I think Gibson Park will get the nod against New Zealand, it looks like. But the level of opposition is going to be tenfold higher. There's no doubt about that.
What's in his game that you think that they like?
I think he moves the ball quickly. I think his brain works very quickly, and I think he kind of he's a typical Kiwi in the fact that he does the simple things really well, and that's where a lot of us kind of, I suppose, struggle at times. It looks that a lot of these guys have X factor, but actually they don't. A lot of them just are very, very belligerent in the fact that they believe in doing the simple things well, and Gibson Park, I think, is a good example of that. But what happened at the weekend, I suppose, because the ruck ball was so neat and so quick, he excelled, and especially I think that attacking kick he put through for Conway, it was better in slow motion than it was in real time, and I think that took a huge amount of skill to execute, and I put it in exactly the right spot, and I think he was fully in control of all aspects of his game. So it was a brilliant performance from a 9.
I just wanted to ask you about the All Blacks, Ronan. They've obviously been brilliant this year. They've clocked up 675 points in this calendar year, which is a calendar year record, eclipsing the box in 2007. Against Italy, it was a little bit more unfashionable, if I can say that, from a New Zealand perspective. 4 of their 7 tries came via line-out drives on the weekend. What's going to be interesting over the course of this World Cup cycle from their perspective is how they set up with the playmakers. Obviously, Mwanga and Barrett was a big talking point in the last World Cup. Last weekend it was Mwanga and McKenzie at 10 and 15 respectively. How do you see this playing out over the next little while? Is it going to be the 2 Barretts most probably when it comes to their 10 and 15?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think for the first time probably in an awful long time, it's very hard to name I would say 5 certain starters for on the New Zealand team, and they have such strength and depth. But I think there's massive competition for places, and you look at the front row, probably second row is easy enough to pick, but the back row, the half backs, the centres and the back three, it's very, very difficult to know which way they will go. And I think, yes, they have scored a lot of points, but I think they concede a lot of points as well. Ireland's defence, I think, will probably be stronger. Pressure rugby is it's a very different game to Super Rugby, and yes, New Zealand scored a lot of points, but I think also that probably, South Africa had very little rugby coming off, I suppose, a dismal Lions series, which they scraped over the line, and they're beginning to find a bit of form. You look at South Africa getting stronger and stronger the more rugby they are playing, culminating with a good performance against Wales at the weekend. But and then they're playing Australia, and Australia were completely out of form at that stage. The Wales game was close for a bit, and I think Ireland will be out of sight if New Zealand start like they did against Italy, because the first 20 minutes they were completely. I was shocked how inaccurate they were, and they can't give away a ball cheaply like that in Lansdowne Road. But I'm fascinated to see what the makeup of the team will be, because I obviously have an interest, having spent time there and knowing, I suppose, the inner detail of a lot of their players. There's such competition for places, and there's different combinations of which way you can do it. But I can't wait for the team announcement.
When you say that they've been conceding a lot of points, what areas are Ireland targeting in that regard then, that might expose, not an Achilles heel, but some sort of area where they might be able to make a count on the scoreboard against the All Blacks if they have been shipping more points?
I think they will. If Ireland get tempo into their game and they're so accurate around the ruck, and I think they can potentially draw. If you draw 3 penalties out of New Zealand in the first 20 minutes, that could potentially be 9 points, and you score in the first 30 minutes, then Ireland all of a sudden could have 16 points on the board, which is huge. And you're saying there's a lot of things that have to go right for that, but I think Ireland are very, very disciplined, and they have great understanding, I think, of the rules of the game. And I think Ireland would probably play a high-tempo game, but they'd also play, I would say, a very intelligent kicking game, and they look to isolate certain New Zealand wingers, depending on who they pick, be it either kicking behind them or putting the ball in the air, because somebody of the back three from New Zealand are brilliant going forward, but their Achilles heel will be potentially turning them or in the air.
It sounds like you're pretty confident for Saturday, Ronan, that Ireland could do something.
No, I suppose I'm talking Ireland up a lot, obviously, in that regard. I think the skill set of New Zealand's team, 1 to 23, is usually what separates them. Their composure on the ball is excellent. Their lines are running, their capacity to hold inside shoulders. They make some things that are difficult. They make it look very, very easy, and when they get flow in their game, there isn't a better team in the world. But you look at probably the boost Ireland got last weekend. I think New Zealand have had probably a long time on the road, and they know they have Ireland and France, so maybe they're probably tipping along, and they know mentally that they have to go up a few gears this weekend to overcome what will be a ferocious Aviva crowd.
All right, Ronan, good stuff. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Cheers. Thanks, Eoin.
Cheers. Thanks. Just a reminder that Irish menswear company Benetti has announced a 2-year partnership with Ronan O'Gara, and he's going to front Benetti's new campaign and its Autumn-Winter 21 collection, which is available at featured retailers nationwide and exclusively online at benetti.ie. Now, it is 8:59 on this Tuesday morning. Let's tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. From 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is up. Jerry Eisenberg on Muhammad Ali. The Dadcast is coming your way at 3 o'clock. A career retrospective with Jim Beglin from 4, and then OTB Gold in the company of Ronnie Delaney at 6 o'clock. Off the ball, as ever, live from 7 o'clock tonight. Let's tell you as well that OTB Sports are partnering with Science Week to ask what challenges are most important to us and how science might help. Visit scienceweek.ie to share your ideas and find out about the events taking place throughout Science Week 2021. During this break, watch out for a clip for our latest video on nutrition.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moore.
For me, footwork has been something that's got me out of trouble on more than one occasion on and off the pitch, so I'll go with that one.
We can relate to that. We all can. We can all relate to that. Got to be sharp around town.
Yeah. I live on the north side now, so I definitely do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Welcome to our side, Hannah.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
For me, I love the carbs, the carbohydrate drink. A lot of my sessions are based around a lot of high speed running, so my output would be, a lot, if you like. We've got these energy gels, again, the science and sports stuff, obviously we're associated with the club, so there's like pure caffeine. I think it's some insane amount of caffeine, which I'd always have before a game in the changing room before we go for the warm-up, and you actually feel it hit you when you start running. You can feel it kind of in your nervous system, if that makes sense. It's like it's proper strong, but I feel like, I don't know whether it's a mental thing where I always need one of them before a game.
Yeah, and then you're not sleeping that night.
Yeah, no chance.
No way.
That's when the recovery dips.
I did that. When you get into the red, I did that years ago when I didn't understand caffeine. We were on, it was 2013 on the Lions tour, and they had a Viper. It was Viper. It was called. It was like a maxi muscle product. It was called Viper, and it was, like you said, a crazy amount of caffeine in it. And I don't know, I was up the walls trying to, because it was a midweek game, trying to get into the weekend team. And I took 2 Red Bulls. I took a Viper on the way to the game and a Viper in the warm-up. And after the game, I couldn't stop shaking. The physios came over and was like, "Are you all right?" I was like, I think I took too much caffeine. And they were like, "Well, how much did you take?" And I talked them through, and they were like, "Right." We were on the bus home, and they rang the hotel and were like, "We need an ice bath in whatever room I was staying in." And I had to get into the ice bath for 15 minutes to balance everything out again. So a steep learning curve.
We all know elite sports people are extremely careful about what they put in their bodies and don't put into their bodies when it comes to diet and nutrition. But just how much has science behind fueling our bodies changed? Well, Aoife Hearn is a registered sports dietitian, and she's a lecturer in WIT as well. She spent a decade working with the Tipperary senior hurlers, and she says consistency is key.
I suppose in my experience from working with athletes that are, elite, from knowing athletes that are elite, the one thing I will see that they do right is all the things that happen outside of the training pitch, court, wherever. So, they're sleeping well, they're doing their prehab, they're doing their rehab, and their eating is consistent. So it's not about just deciding 2 days before the match, "Oh, Jesus, I need to drink loads of water and be hydrated." It's really that attention to detail on a kind of persistent basis that really allows that athlete to get the most out of their training.
It's no secret to anyone that it's extremely important, but I think sometimes the gravity of it hits home when you do it incorrectly. And I always maintain that my first year playing Clare Minor actually was probably the hardest year's training I ever did, because I had no idea how to properly fuel myself or eat properly or anything like that. So I used to be seriously, after every training, I'd have to sit down for half an hour, assess what was wrong with me, and then don't go from there. But in hindsight, it was just because I was not eating properly at all. It was just going to training with no food, and only realised this in the coming years after. And I don't think I've ever trained or found training as hard as that since I've actually started to take it seriously.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
You're welcome back. It is 9:04 on this Tuesday morning. Just to let you know there that during the ad break you would have heard a preview of a special chat between Conor Murray and Katie McCabe in association with our friends at Whoop. OTB presents the Crack the Code series, brought to you by Whoop, the 24/7 personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides sleep, recovery and training insights. See whoop.com for more. Stay tuned to OTB channels on air and online for that full piece about how hydration can impact on your exercise. Now, at 9:05, just to let you know that a tribute song to Munster and Ireland rugby legend Anthony Foley will be launched at half-time at the Aviva Stadium this weekend for the All Blacks game. It is called Alone You Stand. It is by Barry Murphy, former rugby player and Hermitage Green singer, and I'm delighted to welcome that Anthony's sister Orla is with us on the line this morning. Orla, a very good morning to you. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Very good morning to you too. Thank you so much for having me and helping me promote this fabulous song that's a most wonderful tribute to my brother. And it's such an honour to be here. And the song is launching, and the response so far, because it's available to download as we speak from I Donate, Alone You Stand, and you can donate as little as you want. And it's fabulous. It's like a dream come true. The way I describe it is, out of the darkest, deepest sorrow I've ever known, some light has sprung, and it's a work of art. Fair play to Barry. He's very brave. It's kind of like reading his diary. He's very vulnerable and he shares his feelings. He doesn't hold back. So it's absolutely magic to be part of something so special in memory of Anthony.
How does an idea like this come about, Orla? Is it your idea? Is it Barry's idea?
Collaborative. Poor Anthony wasn't even dead, I'd say, a few hours, and I was asking Barry to write a song. And every time I'd meet him afterwards, I'd go, "How's the song coming on, Barry?" And he'd just shrug and he'd go, "It's not. I have writer's block." And I kept asking and he kept shrugging. And then I stopped asking because I started doing my Wild Ways fundraiser in memory of Anthony, which was cycling the Wild Atlantic Way. And for Anthony's 4th anniversary, Barry had actually pinned half of the song, which I loved. It was beautiful. I thought it was perfect as it was. But Barry, being the artist and incredibly gifted that he is, he spent a year finishing off the rest of the song. And it's absolutely, I get where he was coming from now. Because when he was like, "No, it's not finished," I was like, "What do you mean it's not finished? I think it's beautiful." Whereas on Anthony's 5th anniversary, I got to hear the actual new version, the full enchilada, and it blew me away so much. I actually listened to it 5 times, and I just really wanted to give Barry a hug after it, which is unfortunate in today's world, you can't. I just thought I've always admired Barry. Myself and Anthony and Barry actually studied together. That's where our friendships formed. Well, my friendship with Barry, Anthony's was obviously through rugby. So we've very fond memories, and we've always had a good laugh. But he's really pulled it out of the hat this time. So yeah, and he's been so generous donating it to the fundraiser. He's just, from the very start, his generosity knows no ends, to be fair.
I didn't realise that this was in the making for such a long time, Orla. So to know that, and to know that kind of so much emotion over such a long period of time has gone into this, like, how did you feel when you initially heard the song for the first time and it had finally been completed after 5 years?
It's unbelievable. It's better than I ever thought it would be. And it's, at first I was saying, it was a song for Anthony, whereas now I call it a tribute song, because it really is. It's a tribute for everything that Anthony meant to Barry, for the love they all had as teammates, for how much the loss has impacted us all. And it's not just if you were impacted by Anthony's death, if you were impacted by anyone's death, this song will touch and move you. It's going to be a timeless piece, to be fair. It's so how did I feel? Over the moon. It was bittersweet, as you could imagine. I'd rather not be feeling it. I'd rather my brother hadn't died and I wouldn't be having these conversations, but life is difficult and life is hard. It's not what you expect it to be. So you just have to make the most of it and, you know, savor the blessings. And this song is a true blessing, really. And it's lovely to have. And I sing it all the time. I find myself singing it going around, and I've learned to play it on guitar. And I'm no Barry Murphy, but it's lovely. It's very therapeutic.
When did you decide to start fundraising, Orla? When did that become something that you felt would be a good way to channel your grief?
The lockdown, really. I had heard about cycling the Wild Atlantic Way, but when would you ever get time to do something like that? So when we had the lockdown and, you know, social distancing, cycling the Wild Atlantic Way sounded like the perfect idea because, you know, there was no weddings, there was no funerals, there was no rugby matches, you know, no birthdays. So all of a sudden my weekends were free. And I just took the opportunity, and what a lovely way to do it in memory of Anthony. And I'd actually cycled the Camino after he died, which was really raw. That was really raw grief. Whereas this Camino, this journey was about savouring and actually being grateful for all the blessings in life, particularly all the extra years we had Anthony, because he nearly died when he was quite young a few times. So I'm very mindful of how different my life would have been had I not had the enrichment of having my brother alive and knowing him and loving him here. So off I went on the Wild Atlantic Way. I cycled Clare twice due to lockdowns, waiting to get out of intercounty. And it was one of the most epic, most beautiful, rewarding, enriching journeys I've ever experienced. And so much so, I'd do it all again in the morning. Well, maybe not in winter, but I'd do it all again. It's
And you raise a lot of money for charity as well. So it wasn't just about purging your own grief or paying tribute. It was actually something that you were able to put to good use as well.
Yeah, I picked 3 charities close to our hearts. Over 9,000 euros. Actually, it's probably over 10,000 now as we speak. And even Barry's song, the last I checked, is heading to 3,000 on top of that. So the 3 charities are absolutely amazing. Excuse me. Cry, they screen for sudden adult death that Anthony died of, and help screen members of families like ours and others, so that anyone that would be at risk within the family is picked up, and a simple procedure occurs that they get a little thing in, and you know, they're safe, they're monitored for the rest of their lives. And they now provide free grief counselling. And then Carry, which provide sexually abused children and their family support. And they do wonderful work, they're amazing. And then Midwestern Cancer Foundation, who Anthony was actually the ambassador for, and he was on the board of, and they're fabulous. They provide free holistic and counselling for oncology patients in the Midwest. And they're just all fabulous. They're lovely people. They're great to work with. And it's an absolute pleasure to be able to give something back to such wonderful people who help people in need.
As you say, the song is going to be launched at halftime at the weekend. It's called Alone You Stand by Barry Murphy, of course. Let's hear a little bit of it.
You mean so much to me, but the words are hard to speak. Took a dream and made it real. If you see, then you can be. Our world was torn apart, but I'll hold you in my heart until I see your face again. I will miss you, my dear friend.
So that's available to download from idonate.ie/Alone You Stand. And just a reminder then, donations can go to idonate.ie/Orla's Wild Ways. And Orla, I'm just keen to ask, in terms of the rugby community and everything that has been done in tribute to Anthony over the last 5 years, whether it's from Chicago to the Munster game recently, how much has that meant to you, seeing the rugby family, I guess, consistently remembering Anthony and these and Tim as the years go by?
It's absolutely amazing and heartwarming. The support our rugby family has offered from the very start has been amazing, because we're all grieving together. It's not just me grieving my brother. They're grieving their friend, their teammate, their coach, rugby family, and
we just appear to be having a slight issue with Orla's line there, and we're going to try and leave that one off now, but just a reminder that Alone You Stand by Barry Murphy is available to download now at idonate.ie /Alone You Stand. I don't think we're going to re-establish Orla there unless she's ready to go, but that's been Orla Foley, sister of Anthony Foley, and as I say, it's for an absolutely brilliant cause, Orla's Wild Ways charity, and you can donate there at idonate.ie /Orla's Wild Ways. So we're going to hear more of that at halftime in the All Blacks game on Saturday. So thanks a million to Orla Foley for her time this morning. Right, it is 9:15 on this Tuesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. We're here with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. We've got Phil Egan here in studio. Phil, how are you getting on?
How are you doing?
Very well. Where do we want to start here? We're going to get into Ireland in just a moment. We were talking a little bit about the managerial merry-go-round a little bit earlier on, so we might just leave that. We want to actually start with Liverpool. Any concern that this season might begin to unravel just a tad over the next little while?
There certainly was concerns even before the West Ham game. You'd seen previous games, the Brighton one, the weekend before, conceding 2 goals, 2-0 up, and could have conceded more. You think back to the Brentford game as well, the Atletico away game. So Liverpool conceding multiple goals in games is not something you associated with this Klopp team when it was in its pomp. I mean, I think the season they won the league, they didn't concede more than 1 goal in a game until February, and at that stage they had the league wrapped up effectively. So there is a concern there. I don't think it's actually the defence's issue. I know everyone, as soon as Liverpool start conceding goals, a lot of the spotlight seems to fall on Trent Alexander-Arnold because he leaves space at the back. But the way Liverpool play is they want to press you, and if teams can get through it, then they have a chance. You saw it the other day. West Ham were perfectly set up to do that. The Fornals goal is the prime example. I mean, I think Bowen might have been taken down if there was an opportunity there, but Trent Alexander-Arnold was one of those players. He was already on a yellow card, so he couldn't do it. But yeah, there would be concerns. Personally, at the start of the season, I thought Liverpool would be in a title race, but I certainly wasn't tipping them to win the league. I think City have shown already they're the best team in the league. Chelsea might be top, but I think Chelsea have done well to bounce back from the fixtures they had after the defeat to City, when they were absolutely outplayed at Stamford Bridge. City have already gone to Stamford Bridge, Anfield and Old Trafford. They've come away with 7 points. I think City will really put the foot down after this international break, so between mid-November and January, and that's when you'll see their class come through. In terms of Liverpool, the real concern is midfield. Didn't replace Gini Wijnaldum, and I think what Wijnaldum, you had a player that was so durable. He was always in the team. Now you've got Fabinho, Henderson, and obviously it would have been Wijnaldum. That was seen as your midfield 3. Fabinho and Henderson aren't always fit. They are at the moment. So then it's those 2 plus 1, and it's almost operating on a roster of who is fit. So last Sunday, Oxlade-Chamberlain was in because he had impressed against Atletico. Naby Keita was filling that role. He gets injured. Harvey Elliott at the start of the season, he gets injured. Curtis Jones has done that role as well, but none of them are as effective defensively as Wijnaldum. So there's gaps there. Obviously teams get more time on the ball, and then they can play in behind that high line of Liverpool. So that was the concern. The 2 concerns at the start of the season for me were not replacing Wijnaldum and maybe having one more attacker. Now they brought on Origi and Minamino the other day. Origi took his goal really well, obviously scored a really good goal in the League Cup as well against Preston, but he's not as good as, say, if you had the famed front 3 of Firmino, Salah and Mane. Jota is a really good player to bring in. Origi's not of the same calibre, so I think it could come back to bite them. Obviously Salah goes off to the Africa Cup of Nations with Mane and Keita in January.
Because that was the only thing that I would, like, after the United game, that I was like, oh, Liverpool, their charge towards the title could be, that will be the hiccup that will probably be presented to them. If they have a number of hiccups before then, it does change the picture of the season significantly, because you see ground on Chelsea and Manchester City. It's curtains, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the thing for Chelsea is they're losing Mendy.
Yeah.
And that could be a big blow. And yeah, their backup keeper is the world's most expensive keeper, but he's not as good as Mendy. And Mendy, I think back to the Brentford game where they won 1-0, Mendy was exceptional that day. Good goalkeepers win you titles. So they'll be without him for a month. Also, the pressure on Kepa, knowing that he has to step in there, and he's obviously a decent keeper. His confidence was shot for a while, but he's not going to be the same as Mendy. And also that feeds into the Chelsea defence as well, knowing that there's not the same stability as there is when Edward Mendy is there. But
are Chelsea that good? Are we sure Chelsea are that good that we're just going to pencil them in for a really long winning run? Like, look at the game at the weekend. You go up 1-0 pretty early on. I mean, it's not the greatest of all the Burnley teams we've seen. It's not the worst. They're kind of a middling Burnley team, and they were able to get back in the game. And it wasn't a shock they got back in the game. Now, I didn't see the whole 90 minutes of the game, hands up, but certainly on the balance of chances. I think Chelsea are grand.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they were to emerge as like a team who went on a 10, 12, 14, 16 game winning run.
No, I'd agree with you, Ger. I wasn't at the start of the season. I would have said City, and I thought Liverpool would push them closest. Chelsea, obviously, as I said, they've had a nice run of fixtures. They're quite hard to beat, but I think they'll drop too many points. And with Burnley, no matter how bad Burnley are playing, I always feel very uncomfortable watching them. If you haven't got the second goal against Burnley, they'd one shot on target, and then they got the goal, and actually could have won the game. Vidra had a chance at the end where he tried to lob Mendy, and yeah, they're that kind of dangerous team where you always want the second goal. But no, I would agree that Chelsea are obviously set up in a way that they're very hard to break down. They keep plenty of clean sheets. Lukaku will come back in, and he was meant to be the answer, and he started off well, but then you saw the old signs coming in. I mentioned the City game. Chelsea couldn't get out in that game, and when they tried to get out, the ball was bouncing off Lukaku. Like he was chasing a second touch. And
Lukaku was back that day.
Yeah. Now Lukaku, the strengths of Lukaku is when he's facing defenders and he's running at them, but they couldn't do it that day. So yeah, I'm not definitely I'm not drinking the Chelsea Kool-Aid at the moment in terms of them being the team that's going to win the league. I always say at the start of every season when Pep Guardiola's in charge of City, they have the title. It's up to someone else to take it off them.
I think that if you throw enough crap at a wall, though, like a lot of it will eventually stick. And Chelsea just have so many amazing players that they will find a starting 11 every single week. Like you talk about Liverpool's injuries, absolutely valid excuse from Liverpool's perspective.
They had Ross Barkley starting.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
No, I don't agree
fair
with you.
point. Barkley's a fair point.
A lot of this Chelsea stuff, and like Tuchel's quite conservative. They play quite conservative. They allow teams to be in the game. I don't buy that. So I think that like they have a load of expensively assembled talent, but not like.
I think that Ross Barkley is Ross Barkley a better footballer than Ziyech or than Mount or than Pulisic? I would say no, and I'm surprised that we're in this position that Barkley actually starts ahead of all three. Obviously, there's fitness issues.
Pulisic injury prone. He is.
He is, of course, but when it comes to the actual talent available, and he's back available now. He came off the bench in that game. I think it does transform their attacking options, and maybe like was Barkley given a start because you got to give him that opportunity. You got to see if he's good enough to be starting in this team when he's given a full 90 minutes to play. In that case, or where do you see him in the pecking order?
Even Loftus-Cheek has got back in now. I rate Loftus-Cheek, but he's been injured. He started their Champions League game last week. It was his first Champions League start in 6 years. So that tells you where he's at. The potential is there, but he's gone out and he's had loan moves. He's quite a big player in terms of his physique, and he picks up these injuries because he's quite robust. So he, like Barkley, I didn't think we'd see these kind of players back in the Chelsea squad, but going back to some of the results they've had earlier in the season, they've eked them out with goals from wing-backs. Now, you don't care where the goals come from, but eventually those goals will stop.
Yeah.
The wing-backs are not going to keep winning you games. As good as Reece James, well, I certainly rate Reece James ahead of Ben Chilwell. I think Reece James is an exceptional player. But, yeah, I just think there's only 11 games in, and a lot can happen. So I just think City, we saw this last season with them as well. Like they won't really get going, I don't think, until the middle third of the season.
We were chatting about the managerial vacancies a little bit earlier on in the show. Gerard's panicking, he's quaking in his boots. The prospect of Steven Gerrard might be Aston Villa manager. There is a prospect of Frank Lampard becoming Norwich manager, and there is a prospect of Brendan Rodgers becoming Manchester United manager, although somebody was in touch a little bit earlier on to say Aston Villa should snap up Brendan Rodgers right now. How do you see this thing playing out? We might just focus on Villa and Norwich here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Gerrard would be willing to leave Rangers, where he's obviously won a title. He's in a very good position to win back-to-back titles, and this one would probably, well, I know last season stopped the 10 in a row for Celtic, but this is a proper season. You've got fans in the ground. This would be a bit more special, I think, and the fact that it'd be back-to-back. Would he leave that? I think a lot of Liverpool fans might feel a lot more comfortable seeing what Gerrard can do in the Premier League before. A lot of people feel that he's going to just walk into Liverpool. I don't know when.
You're a guinea pig, Ger. That's what Aston Villa are.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it would be. A little experiment.
But I think Aston Villa have a really good squad. Obviously, they just haven't found that cohesive unit yet since Grealish has gone, and they've had to change their way of playing. And unfortunately for Dean Smith, you could see the last few games he was trying out different formations, which kind of told the story that he was trying to stumble upon something that would get them back to winning ways. It's amazing how quickly it happened, though, and it just shows how ruthless the Premier League is, where you think of the win at Old Trafford. Okay, they go to Spurs the following weekend and they weren't great. They lose 2-1. Then they're coasting 2-0 up against Wolves, who weren't scoring goals at the time, and then they somehow lose that game and it's all gone downhill and he's gone. But in a way, I'm glad it didn't, like, the rot hadn't set in, where it wasn't toxic at Villa Park. There was no one throwing cabbages at Dean Smith, where he's obviously a Villa fan. He took them over mid-table in the Championship, gets them up, is trying to establish them in the Premier League, and he's loved at Villa Park. It hadn't set in, where you look at what's happening now at Old Trafford. Solskjaer, a club legend, but is in danger now of things. They're starting to turn, but
do we, sorry to change this to Manchester United, but do we think that will actually happen? It feels that for the last 12 months, ever since they got beaten 6-1 by Spurs last year, and we thought that Solskjaer would lose his job, people were saying that week, if Solskjaer goes now, he can protect his reputation and he will never not be a club legend. We're here over 12 months later and we're still saying the same thing. No matter what, I think that he can hold on to the job and he will still be a club legend. That the reason why he's here is because he is an untouchable club legend, and no matter when he decides to resign or get sacked, I don't think that it actually will be altered in any way.
Eventually it won't, but while things are fresh, if you think of the 6-1 to Spurs, there was no crowd there. So there was signs on Saturday that they weren't necessarily chanting for Solskjaer to leave, but certain things like chanting the name of Donny van de Beek, they knew what they were doing at the Stretford end, where they're chanting for a guy.
Like he was the second coming of Zidane.
Yeah, exactly.
Look what he did. He kept possession.
Yeah, and amazing. I was saying
he didn't keep possession. That was the problem.
No, and I was saying he could go in 2-footed on someone, and he would have got a standing ovation leaving the pitch, because people just want to see something different. They're sick of McFred, and Solskjaer always goes back to them, where you sign players like Van de Beek who are meant to fit into systems, but unfortunately United don't have a system. And Sancho was signed, he's a systems player as well. So they're signing all these players, but they don't have a coach that's able to bring them in. And when things go bad, he'll always revert back to Scott McTominay and Fred. And I think we all saw what Roy Keane thinks of Fred. And look, I mean, he's one of a few problems that Manchester United have, but I don't know where they go. I thought Conte would have been a great appointment for Manchester United, but we know why he wasn't brought in, because he'd ruffle feathers. He'd annoy the hell out of the Glazers, because he would demand. He's very demanding. Whereas Solskjaer, John Giles touched on it last night on the show, where he's a yes man, and it's very easy. Management love yes men, where they can just call the shots. And Solskjaer, look, he knows he's blessed to have that job, so he's not going to try and disrupt things. And the way it's playing out at the moment, it's, you know, they're obviously not going to win a league title. I don't think people thought they were going to win the league this season, but they certainly thought they'd have a better crack. That could still happen, but it's very unlikely.
I think the thing about his reputation is that fans are fans, and so therefore they will remember the fact that he got rid of all that dead wood in the squad and he set it up for the success of whoever comes next. And you would expect whoever comes next to be somebody with a proven track record of managing a super club, and therefore they should be able to have some level of success, a Champions League semi-final or final, a proper title run with this squad of players and whoever else, whatever the next injection of cash is, because the squad is pretty good. Now, there's a few obvious issues with it, but with a good manager, with a style of play that looks at Sancho and looks at Rashford and looks at all of those attacking talent and says, we're going to play this way, you're going to work your nuts off, and it's going to result in success. Ronaldo will have a role, whatever that role is. Like, I don't know. I think it's all set up for success, and I think very quickly the Man United fans will be like, yeah, Solskjaer was a great transition. He got rid of the players from Van Gaal and Mourinho's era, and he wasn't Van Gaal and Mourinho, and he'll come back to the club and he'll do the lap of honour and they'll play the goal from 99 and away we go.
And it'll be even more true in a few years' time, because like we're at the place now, and of course it's down to West Ham's success, where Manchester United fans are like, God, should have just given, or Manchester United fans are like, should have just given Moyes a little bit more time. Like there is a huge degree of revisionism. Like Arsenal fans do it with Unai Emery all the time when he's having success with Villarreal and winning the Europa League. It's like, did Arsenal sack Unai Emery so soon? Whereas in that moment, it's like David Moyes couldn't possibly keep his job, and that's clear. Same with the Emery situation. In this moment, Solskjaer cannot possibly keep his job. Whereas in a few years' time, people will look back and say, Solskjaer did a great job. He steadied the ship, and maybe it'll lead to some period of success.
Yeah, but like I'm not like. There's already people. I can't even believe I'm about to say it, but there's already people mentioning David Moyes could be just who Manchester United need. No, he
Pat Nevin
showed,
was saying it last night, wasn't he?
He showed it the first time that he doesn't have what it takes to manage Manchester United. Just certain things that he said. You have to. There's just a certain way you have to manage a club like Manchester United, and he used to just say the wrong thing regularly. Where that's not what you say as a Manchester United manager. And people say, "Oh, look, I mean, it's all for show." What, like, you have to be seen saying the right thing, but that's how you manage a super club. You embrace it. And you look at Jurgen Klopp, he talked about the history, but he didn't use it as something to keep looking back on. He used it as something to help bring the club forward, and he embraced it. Guardiola hasn't had to do the same at Manchester City because they're nowhere in the same league as Manchester United in terms of their history and their pedigree. But that's the worry. We're talking about who United appoint next. Would you trust this current ownership to get that appointment right? I couldn't say.
Absolutely not.
I couldn't say I would be confident that they'd get it right.
You could say they've already got it wrong by missing out on Antonio Conte.
I think Conte, and people say, oh, it was a short term, but short term, what's short term success? As in winning titles? I'm pretty sure United fans.
They signed a 36-year-old striker. They are very much in a short term state of mind.
Yeah, and like Ger touched on it there, the squad is good. It needs a serious injection of urgency in it, because there's a lot of energy and pace in that squad. But looking at them the other day, they set up like a championship team that was trying to just contain Manchester City. And if there was replays, let's see, can we keep it tight and we might get a replay and get another payday. That's the way it was. But it's Manchester United. They shouldn't be playing like that.
We don't have time to get into Ireland, unfortunately, Phil, but can you give us a number between 1 and 10 in terms of your optimism levels for Portugal?
About 7. And just quickly before, I think in terms of the team selection, I know Shane Keegan was on with you, I would be surprised if 9 of the starting 11 from Faro don't play on Thursday night. So Dara O'Shea got injured. I think Amabama Daly, who came on from, I think he will start, and obviously there's now Aaron Connolly and I think Callum Robinson. So I'm kind of sticking with that Hendrick, Cullen and McGrath midfield,
right,
and Doherty and Coleman.
There's a lot of optimism on the All Blacks front and on the Portugal front on OTB AM this morning. Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million. OTB AM has been with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. Tomorrow morning we are hearing from Kenny Cunningham and former Irish Rugby captain Keith Wood, 2 former Ireland captains there. Right now, though, we're bringing you Pat Nevin in conversation with Joe last night.
But you get weeks like this now and again. First of all, little line on the managerial thing. It always seems to happen in November, and that's the right thing to do because you need the time. But it's not the ones we expected. All the ones are falling except the one everyone expected was Ole. But yeah, if you think you're going to have to get rid of him, you might as well do it now. Bite the bullet, give a new guy time, give him some money. If he needs it during the transfer window, it always makes sense. It's a dangerous time. Although I have to say, the Farke one was a bit of a surprise. In fact, both of them were slightly surprising in a way, because Villa had done so well, last season. And it is one of those things you think, give them a bit of a chance at the start of this season, but they've just not waited, have they?
No, they sure haven't. So Villa in 16th, 10 points from 11. They had started brightly in some respects. The wins against Manchester United, the result against Everton, a sense that they were coping okay with the Jack Grealish departure. They had spent big, 100 million on Buendia, Danny Ings, Leon Bailey, I think in total under Dean Smith, even with Jack Grealish being sold for 100 million, the net spend is over 200 million. So they have spent money, which would be the case against Dean Smith. Villa have lost 5 in a row. I suppose the case for him, he took over Villa when they're in the bottom half of the Championship, 10-game winning streak, make their way up through the playoffs, looked doomed in the Premier League before the pandemic, but he kept them up against the odds. 11th last season, and as you said, give him a chance. So the Dean Smith one, I hadn't watched too much Villa, so I wasn't too sure. It does seem the performances were worryingly bad.
Yeah, and no, they haven't been anywhere near as good. They were so exciting, when they were an unknown quantity to some, well, not completely unknown, but with some players that were coming through that were suddenly really special. Obviously Grealish, but particularly McGinn as well. People get used to them, and also you take Grealish away from that, and you think to yourself, it's only a player. Do you really need a rebuild after that? But it was so important to them, you kind of do. And the rebuild is a whole bunch of players, 2, 3 coming in, but they all got to bed in. And you've got to find a system that works for them, and it's got to click into gear. And that's actually not very long to allow that to happen. Just these games at the start of the season. And you can have a little run of poor form, and that can happen to absolutely any team out with the top 4 or 5. And then to jump on them like that, they better have somebody very, very good ready to come in, because that's a real surprise to me that you go with someone who's done a very good job over 2 divisions and then had a bit of a slip after your star player's gone, and then you hoof them right away. I understand the thinking. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it soon. But you just wonder. I mean, I don't know what the betting is just now, but what stick John Terry would get if he walked back into that job.
Well, the names being linked certainly this morning, last time I looked, were the Danish manager, Kasper Hjulmand, Ralph Hasenhüttl, Steven Gerrard and Roberto Martinez. They were the names. To what extent those names are firmly linked and on firm foundations, I don't know. But I mean, I don't know. Anyone eye-popping there for you? Gerrard would be box office, but in terms of guaranteed improvement on Dean Smith.
There's no guarantee, and Robbie Martinez is a great mate of mine. But I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, because, what he's done with where he is just now is very good. But, there's some quite good players in Belgium. And there's a few over there that say, he should have done better because he should have won something with that group. So, as you know, there's no guarantees in the Premier League anyway. And some of them will be interesting. Your eyes raise a little bit. But I maybe a little bit slower than most people. I'm kind of think people should be given an opportunity to turn things around, especially when there's been either A, massive changes, or B, a massive change, and this one's been a massive change. You really need to adapt to what the team actually stands for when you take Grealish away. So I'm kind of hurt for him a wee bit because he has been hoofed that quickly. None of them really jump out that, they're an absolute stick on certainty. Gerrard would be very interesting. Would Gerrard take that job?
I was going to ask you, is that a good move? Is that an attractive move for Steven Gerrard?
Well, considering, there was big hints towards Newcastle, right now, Newcastle seems a bit of a stinker for some people because they're going down, but everybody knows if Newcastle stick by you for 3 years, it's going to be a cracker. It's going to be some job you're going to have. So that's one that if you were Stevie G, and he was heavily linked with that one, even though they're down that part of the league, it's the money and it's the time you will get. And And I think if you're going to get a team out of trouble, with Villa, if you don't get them out of trouble, you're probably looking at getting sacked at the end of the season again. Whereas if it's Newcastle, they're that far down and everyone knows they're bordering on basket cases, you're probably allowed to actually get relegated so that you can have a massive rebuild with the right amount of money and the right amount of time. So Stevie G, I'm not putting it beyond them to do that, but it's a big thing to walk away from, Rangers where they are just now. And you can look at a classic example is Frank Lampard, isn't it? He goes away and takes the Chelsea job. It doesn't actually matter. Your first major job you get in England, it can absolutely batter you. And Frank Lampard at Chelsea, that wasn't a bad one to get. I think Stevie G is looking for higher than that.
So I was listening to David Gold on TalkSport this morning, and David Moyes was given a guard of honour when he entered the boardroom after the match. I'd love to. A right thought, I'm sure, crossed David Moyes' mind as he got that guard of honour. But hey, you take it when it's going. My imagination's running away with me. The guard of honour, they're all got their hands up with a wee flag, and they've all got a little hatchet behind the other arm. Next time you come in, you're going to get that. It's amazing what he's done with them. I love it. Obviously, again, as somebody who's a mate, and I've never stopped at any point in saying the same things. That I rate him as a top manager. And of course, that sounded like I was crying in the wilderness when he was having a tough time in Spain and obviously up in the northeast. But everything is there for a very good manager, and a sensible manager who, given the right amount of time, will do a very, very good job for you. And even West Ham didn't give. They were unsure about him. Obviously going away and coming back, sort of stuff. But he has put together what looks like a phenomenal looking outfit. They're good at what they do. They're not a lump into the middle team. That's not what they are. They're far more than that. But he's got so much out of every one of them, and then use that physicality. And knowing that they're not good at certain things, they don't do it. They know Kurt Zuma's not going to play out for the back. So they kind of don't ask him to do it. They just do something else. And you watch the likes of Manchester United, obviously you need to mention him and them in the same breath. And they're trying to play it for the back, but they can't against teams that are, that they're not good enough to play it from the back from. So that's a really intriguing thing, that you look at the guy and what he does, and they're good at set pieces, and they know that there are weaknesses, and he works in that. And he knows that's the strength of go and use them. They're fantastic, and what they did, certainly against United, I think what surprised everyone who watched it, and certainly me as well, they get the goal and then they draw him back, and then Liverpool look like Liverpool again, and then you think the second half's going to go a certain way, and it's just brilliant, isn't it? He completely changes it. No, I'm not going for that. I'm not accepting my players going for that. They are not going to sit back, take it, try and play in the break and nothing else, and believe you're going to get beat. No, I'm going to tell them we're capable of beating this lot, and here are the weaknesses. And they go and do it. It was a bit of a masterclass in a lot of ways. Maybe got a wee bit lucky with that goal, the first goal, where I think a number would have given that as a free kick. I wouldn't, personally. I thought that the goalkeeper was just a little bit weak. And I think just the way the rules are at the moment in England, there's a little bit more leeway given. He needs to be a wee bit stronger than that. But certainly all the way through the game, certainly in that second half, he must have been more proud of him than just about any game this season. And do you see anyone? I don't see anyone coming to, the London Stadium and thinking, right, we've got decent, we're going to win this, we're going to walk this. Everyone's going to have a battle there because they're so well organised. With the one big caveat, he ain't got depth, and that's going to be. Does he ever not have depth? So across the 11 games thus far this season, he's only made 4 changes. 4 changes across the entire 11 games in the Premier League. Needless to say, he's top of that table for minimal changes made. Now, he is using different players in Europe. However, once he gets past Lanzini, tends to come on, doesn't he? And I suppose he's a touch of depth with Koufal, who's on the bench. Ben Johnson, the 21-year-old, started. But really, once he gets to player 14, 15, things do drop off a touch. And based on his team selections, he knows that.
He does. There's decent players there. Noble will come in and do your job. Yeah. He's always been a good player. Diop will do your job. Fredericks and players like that. I actually really like Masuaka, and he comes on quite regularly as well. But they're not going to be a team that are going to go and stay at the very top level, are they? They're going to kind of do you a job. So he knows. He absolutely knows that he can't afford 2 or 3 injuries, and he clearly can't allow Antonio to get injured. I mean, you've got Yarmolenko who could do a job, coming from certain areas, but in reality, no one's even close to Antonio and the effect that he can have in the games. And watching Antonio as he's came along the last few seasons, because he's got injuries, but he's just kept on improving. But the pace he's going at, and he's lasting much longer in a lot of the games now. But it's going to blow up. It is. It's not maybe. It is. It's going to blow up, and it's probably with an injury. If you keep on going to the well that much, they need cover in various areas. They've done it at centre-back. They're probably okay there now. But that's Moyes' way. He kind of tinkers with it, as tiny wee bits. But if you're talking about top 4, it's not that. It's much, much more than that. Just look at the squads of everybody else in the top 4 generally, and they're just phenomenal in comparison.
Yeah, I hadn't realised how well Antonio was going until yesterday. I saw this season thus far, he's been involved in 9 goals, as in scored 6, 3 assists. This is in 11 games, so only Mo Salah is better than him on that front. So he's having a remarkable season. The other thing that jumps out, as well as the very obvious organisation, and you can see this level of concentration emanating from them when Liverpool are in possession. They're closing off avenues, they're in touch with each other, the spaces are good. They make it look, Mourinho teams when they were defending well made it look kind of easy to control the game without the ball, and obviously it's not easy when you look at Liverpool scoring 5 at Old Trafford, but so West Ham are doing that. And then the other thing within the organisation which jumps out, if the theme of the weekend was not closing down and not running hard, take Fernandes at Old Trafford for the cross for the Bailly on goal, which was held up as the big example. Geez, West Ham don't half get in your faces. I mean, Jared Bowen and Benrahma and Johnson and Creswell, they are out, they are on the ball. And you kind of have to say, well, geez, players don't do that without a manager insisting on it and really drilling them to within an inch of their life. So for Moyes, of all the weekends to put in a defensive masterclass like that, the day after what we saw at Old Trafford wasn't a bad one for him. I'm sure it must cross his mind, they got rid of me too early. They didn't give me a chance.
It crosses my mind all the time because I said they were mad for doing it. So yeah, it must cross their mind, and it will. It won't be in the forefront of his mind just now, but he'll think, I can get another one of the big ones. I'm capable of doing it. He will feel that. He was realistic enough to know that, it probably won't be Manchester United because people don't like egg in their faces. But he'll feel that there are other massive jobs, but he won't be thinking it too much just now because he knows that he's in a great place, with the squad that he's got, with the love that he's getting from the West Ham fans. And if you're getting those guards of honour, that kind of helps as well. But he would rather have a pen and a piece of paper and a cheque rather than the old guards of honour. I think that would help a wee bit more. Yeah. But he's been so sensible over the last number of years. I mean, in a way, Man United's helped him more than anything, because what was his failing at Manchester United is when he asked them, do you want it done right away or do you want legacy, which will take a while and I won't throw all the money at it right away. They said we want legacy. So he didn't spend the money stupidly right away. Well, he's learned that lesson. You don't listen to people. You just get in there and get as much money as you can out of them, and you get the best team on the pitch, and then you're judged by that. Because nobody's turned around a year after Moyes left Man United and said, oh no, but you were building a legacy and you were trying to do it the best way financially. Nobody gives a stuff about that in the end. So a manager can't think that way. Not in the modern game, because no one will give you that chance. And Moyes knows that now, 100%. So he will be there with not exactly the begging bowl, but he'll be there making his demands, saying, look, we've got a chance at Champions League football. And they have got a chance at Champions League football. But they haven't got a chance with this smaller squad. They need more backup. Probably 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, because he was asked on TV, is this a title challenge? And he was thinking, how do I answer that without seeming too negative? But really, I need to shoot this down.
Can I give you the answer to that brilliantly? Because he was asked similar questions when he was in Sunderland. And he said, he just told the truth.
Yeah.
He said, look, this is a team that can go down. And he was slaughtered for it.
Yeah.
And I think we chatted about it at the time, and I said,
I thought it was not great. And I think, because he literally said yesterday, well, I don't want to seem negative. So clearly that's another scar which he has and he's learned from.
Yeah. And you think, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to go too heavy on this, but keeping a realism, and of course he's a dour Scotsman like the rest of us. I'm not as dour as someone else. But he's learned the lesson of, if I go ultra negative or ultra, like, just sensible and logical, you get battered for it. So you need to caveat it all the time. So you're not actually hearing what he absolutely thinks. He's being honest, but he's caveating it slightly. The caveat has to be, and he doesn't want to say, give me the money, show us the money. He can't say that out loud. But he doesn't have to love everybody else saying it for him, because we all know it's the truth, and that's what the message is. And it's, I have to say, like a lot of people, I'm totally shocked. I thought top 6 would be brilliant for them, because they've had a good time under him last season. But this is pretty special. But as we all know, it's still early times in the season, and it only takes a couple of injuries. It really only takes a couple. And they'll be struggling to put a run together and score goals. I've heard lots and lots of names put forward. The thing is, I think quite a lot of players like the idea of working with Moyes, because he is straightforward, honest. And to go back to that other point you were making about the fact that certain managers get you to do that running, we know who they are, don't we? Conte's going to get you doing it. You know that Klopp's going to get you doing it. Tuchel's going to get you doing it. It's a dead simple. If you don't do it, you don't play. And it doesn't matter who you are. And I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's been in a position to do that for a long time. Because some of the players that weren't doing it were just too big a name to be able to do it, for him. Whereas you look at him now, eventually he'll give up and say, right, forget that. I don't care who you are. I'm just going to play the guys that work for me. I just don't know if there's enough of them that are good enough.
Well, let's talk United then, because we talked to Liverpool a good bit earlier on with John Giles. So the Manchester derby, it was a complete stroll. I mean, it was actually a dull game. In some respects, it was so dead. They were so in control of Manchester City, and it was in that, in some respects more demoralising and chastening for Manchester United. So the running point that you make, because that was the focal point, the big discussion post-match was the lack of Manchester United running an application, and I mentioned the Fernandes moment where he's kind of closing down as if he's closing someone down on the halfway line as opposed to stop across. So maybe there's a degree of habit there, but that's given him way too much of a free pass. I don't really know what to say about the situation at Old Trafford anymore. I mean, it's just painful at this stage. The post-match interviews are painful, the sound bites are painful, the performances are awful, the tactical efforts to try and stem the tide are just transparently going to fall flat in their face. Like, everything about it is falling apart. I don't know, it's just horrific.
I know, you feel sorry for someone who's got himself into that position. And you can actually take just about any player and then decide why that's a problem, because there are so many just now. Fernandes, he's not going to work like that, so you can't do a press, and neither is Cristiano. So you now get 2 players playing for you, so you can't play that way, full stop. As we've known in the past, Pogba will do it sometimes and he won't do it other times, and you've no idea when he's going to do it. So you've got big, huge name players, and maybe the 3 most talented players, and you've no way of trusting if they're going to be able to do or want to do what you're asking them to do, which is to play at that high tempo. Because either A, incapable, or B, don't want it.
Can I rudely interrupt you on that point? Because I'm visualising Graham Souness and Roy Keane disgusted at the notion that certain players won't put in a shift. That the memory of the Sky chat lingers, I think, for people. If Conte had arrived at Old Trafford, would he take a look at Ronaldo and take a look at Fernandes because of their lack of work and say, out you go? No.
It's easier for Conte to sideline Ronaldo. It's easier for him. I think he can do that. And just say openly, no, he's an impact player. We'll bring him on as an impact. He's a certain age and he's brilliant and we love him, but we'll use him as an impact player. And that's fine. And if it means bringing Cavani or whatever when he's fit, or players get Rashford working harder as a front man or one of an attacking 3-4-3, he can do that. He can do it without a problem. He can do it without everybody looking at pictures of Sir Alex saying Ronaldo should be playing. It doesn't matter. Conte's he's enough. He's got that strength of personality. You can do it, and it's fine. And he's also got the history behind him. You can do it, and it's fine. So he can actually do that. As well as enough of them there that are willing to buy into that. And you will maybe get more buy-in over certain types of managers. You just will do. Certain types of managers can actually make these players work harder. It can't make them better quickly. It cannot do that. And the ones that have got weaknesses, you know, and it's taken a long time, but I think it's a real shame though, but people now see all the weaknesses of Wan-Bissaka, which I remember saying to you a long time ago when he was at Palace, how much I loved him, but he can't really kick the ball.
No, it's not great when he's one of your wing backs at home. It's not going to work. So then I wonder, because you would hate in 5 years' time for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to release his autobiography and for him to say, well, look, I love Ronaldo as much as anyone does, but I didn't really want them to buy him because it messed up my plans, and I had Greenwood playing centre forward and I had Cavani and I thought it was okay, and then I just sort of felt I had to play him, and then there was Alex Ferguson and caught on video, and you know, you got to play your best players, and I just I went along a bit with it. I mean, that would be so frustrating, because here's the point. This is coming to an end, it seems. Let's have it end on your terms. Like, you've no other cards left to play here than to do what you in your heart of hearts think is right, I would say.
Well, his other card was to change the system, and he did that, right?
Yeah.
And it worked for 1 week, and then it didn't work the next week. And then he still tried to play off the back, and against high-tempo teams, they're not good enough, you know, against the Liverpools and Chelsea and Man City, not good enough to be able to do that. So they've actually got a technical problem in that. But you're right, eventually. So he kind of got himself in a position where, wait a minute, I'll try this thing. And this thing looked like it worked for a week, and then it's not worked again. And you're right, it comes to a stage where he thinks, sod it, I'll just do. I just want the guys that are going to work their socks off for me, and there might be a team spirit that grows from there. Of course, the thing that is a catch-22, that lot might not be good enough. They might not be good enough. They'll be good enough to get, you know, they're good players, so they can get you nearish towards the top four, but they're not going to get you anywhere close to the top spot which they're aiming for, or they were initially aiming for. But yeah, that's what it'll come down to in the end. They will do that, because you'd rather go out absolutely in your own terms, and every manager gets that. Problem is, it might not actually get there, but then that's a suspicion it might do, because let's be honest, is there somebody shouting and bawling out there who's the most obvious replacement that's going to come in and completely and utterly you can trust, oh, that's going to be a good next Man United manager? Because you kind of need to do that with the next one.
Yeah.
And there's not an obvious one out there who's desperate to do it and who will walk into it.
What do you think, by the way, of Brendan Rodgers? Leicester not going well. Obviously, Rodgers would jump at it, I think.
I think he would jump at it at the moment because they're not going as well. Yeah. It's the expectation is weird with Leicester, because, you know, they've just overperformed for so long, and it was never ever going to last forever. Eventually they will fade back into mid-table for a while, and that will happen. And he'll look at it and think, well, wait a minute, if I'm a top man, I just don't think he'd be very popular at United. You know, certainly the fans wouldn't go for that I don't think they would want him at all. But some would, but I think a large amount wouldn't be. And they'd be really quick to go onto him.
Because of Liverpool or because of his personality?
I think Liverpool mostly, but as soon as he gets wrong, things go wrong at all. You got a lot from Man United fans allowing Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a bit of leeway. He won't get any. He will get absolutely none, because of I'm actually not going to say the personality. I'm going to say the considered personality, what people think his personality is, how he's absolutely portrayed, and he's portrayed himself in certain times, but how he's been portrayed, because you tend to find most players that have worked under him are pretty positive about him. So, you know, I think that's a big risk if they went for Brendan.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a bad manager, and I think he'd do a decent job. Who knows? But it's a massive risk to go for Brendan.
Yeah, fair enough. So, with Conte gone, slipped through their fingers, who is the obvious candidate for you?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know who I would have, but it's because I'm difficult. I would have Moyes back, and I would say, oh, just you lot shut up and let that guy.
Are you being deadly serious? You would get Moyes back?
If I was there, and it was me that was making the decision, I would do that. I wouldn't have got rid of him in the first place. But I know, I fully understand that Man United fans wouldn't like it. I know and fully understand that he get hammered. They would be absolutely hammered in the media. And I know it'd be a difficult thing, another really difficult time to take over Manchester United. But, you know, I don't think there's a more obvious Man United type manager who's sitting out there just now. I don't actually know if he's available. In fact, in all honesty, right now, I'm not sure he would take it right at this moment. I really don't. So I think they just go abroad and, you know, look at who's doing the best, and, you know, who's the most recent German we can get.
Who's the new wonder kid? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Exactly, and you know, and it's such a risk. It's a massive risk. Remember, very, very recently, you know, it's very recently that all the top jobs were apparently going to Eddie Howe, and then he was out for quite a long time, and then he's second choice, maybe third choice at Newcastle. So, you know, there is no obvious one. The big ones, some of the best managers in the business, they've either had, such as Mourinho, and didn't work, or else they ain't going there because of where they want to be just now. And that's where the problem is.
Before you go, Chelsea dropped 2 points to mitigate the pain somewhat of Liverpool yesterday. Thomas Tuchel's verdict was unlucky. Can happen in football. Should have won. So, one, do we take that at face value? Is that right? And secondly, talk to us about Ross Barkley, because 27 now, first Premier League start, standing ovation on 73 minutes. During the summer, his number 8 jersey was ripped off him and given to Kovacic, which I'm sure, you know, you wouldn't need to be paranoid to take that as a message. But Tuchel was singing his praises, saying he's really knuckled down, and, you know, he maybe sees a bit of a future there for Barkley at the club, who's still only 27.
Yeah, and it was his last kick of the ball in that game could have won Chelsea the game, you know, but he just blasted it over the bar. But he's certainly lifted himself. Attitude's been absolutely perfect, you know, and he just had to get his head slightly screwed on. It's a battle there. He's gone out and looked at the rest of, and he knows that anywhere from here is downhill for him.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember.